Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto is neglected by family Acnologia. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by kotei no seiryuu and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Jinchuriki of the Apocalypse. It was dark night of Konoha in which chaos spurred through the area, destruction upon the village came through as the nightmare began in which was known well as October 10th, the night in which Kyuubi, the nine-tailed demon fox had been released upon the shinobi village of Konohagakure no Sato. A swing from one of its swaying nine tails could cause massive land tsunamis and could send hundreds of shinobi to their own deaths. Only On-Man took forth the challenge of the released beast, he was about 5'11" to a near 6 feet in height, with spiky blonde hair and sea blue eyes. He wore a shinobi flak vest under a white trench coat with red flames at the tips of the coat with writing on the back and possessed a blue headband with the symbol of a leaf on his head. He was Minato Namikaze, Kiroi Senko, and Yondaime Hokage of Konohagakure. Minato stood in front the Kyuubi now, coming in between the beast and a woman with crimson red hair. The woman looked frail, holding on to life as much as she could, the show of her life slowly coming to an end was showing on her exhausted face. She was able to suppress the power of her unique chakra chains, though how long that would last even she couldn't tell. Minato stared back at the devilish eyes of the fox now, his stare seemed to be more serious than ever. He looked down to the ground real quick seeing a newborn child, bundled in a cloth under a seal. Its round face possessing 6 whisker marks on his face. Though almost looked identical to the older man without a guess in the world. A clutching feeling of despair came into Minato's chest. He had only one option, and that was to seal this beast inside his own son. Well, his wife Kushina, stubborn as the deed was, wouldn't accept it, there was no other choice for them to agree on this. It was a hard choice, doing this would bring his son into a world of darkness and isolation. However, he knew the boy would get by, he is his and Kushina's son after all. Forgive me Naruto, Minato thought as he began to form hand seals quickly and efficiently, as he then stopped within a mere seconds. Shiki Fujin no Jutsu, he said as a spiritual entity came into place as a ghostly demon, its pale black eyes and menacing features make any man believe that we're staring at death itself. A pale hand went through Minato's body as it launched itself at the massive beast, grabbing its yin chakra and slowly pulling it toward Minato. Once closed, slowly went inside Minato's body and was sealed, showing the engraved marking of Minato's stomach. Minato slumped slightly as he felt the pressure of the chakra and winced. Such heavy chakra, he looked up and noticed the size of the Kyuubi now was half its original size, he had to act fast. Minato quickly made hand signs once more and summoned what looked like a ceremonial bed and quickly placed his son down on the soft cushioning. He could hear the coughing and the heavy wheezing from Kushina and looked back for a quick second. Kushina. It was a short amount of time before Minato realized that the chakra chains binging the Kyuubi were loosening. He and Kushina looked at to see the massive claw aiming towards his and Kushina's beloved child. Both rushed in front of the beast hand and as quick they were pierced from behind, holding the claw to slow its momentum, thanking Kami that it barely reaches Naruto. Damned humans. Cursed the Kyuubi as he snarled once the chains tightened around him once more. Kushina looked at her husband and slowly gave a nod as she coughed a little. You win, I guess you're really serious about this. She said quietly. Minato nodded as he smiled. Thank you, Kushina-chan. He looked up at the Shinigami and looked back at Kushina. I'm about to perform the Haki Fujin and store what chakra we have left, so it's best to say what you have to say now, he said smiling at his beloved wife. Kushina looked at the young child and smiled. Sachi, eat healthy and grow up to a big boy. Make sure you make friends, friend you can depend on, learn your ninjutsu and listen to your teachers, I was never good with either, hopefully you will. She said softly as she grinned, and make sure you meet a girl who's like me, okay, you're going to go through so experience much difficulties as a child, but never forget who you are. Minato smiled as he looked at his son. Sachi, make sure you listen to your godfather, even though he's a pervert he will be there for you. Listen to Kakashi too, hopefully he'll be there for you as well. He said performing the sealing rites. We love you Naruto, the both said, leading to one blinding light Haki Fuin. The light had embraced the Kyuubi, the demon here roared one last time before being sealed within Naruto, leaving only a child wailing on the ceremonial bed. It was only a few seconds before the group of shinobi forces came into the scene, beside the child was both a Sandaime Hokage and a young Kakashi. The bodies of the Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki were gone. Sensei Kakashi said knelt down to pick up his teacher's son, his living legacy. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked at Kakashi holding Naruto and sighed as he shook his head with guilt. If only her had gotten there sooner, he would have been the one to take Minato's place. They had lost a hero of Konohagakure, in his place of him and his wife, they had their legacy and a new Jinchuriki. Kakashi, take Minato's son away for a few days to a nearby shelter. I don't want the civilians finding out about this yet. Not until there is some stability in people's minds about the event has occurred. He told the young Jonin before sending out his shinobi to go look for further investigation of how the beast got loose and ordered the remaining members around to make sure the people are safe and uninjured. Hi, here's Insama, said Kakashi. He leaped into the trees of the night, heading north towards the outskirts of Hai no Kuni. Break. Kakashi traveled a steady pace as he carefully held Naruto in his arms. The young shinobi looked at the sleeping baby. The young child could be seen with more traits of his father, but had his mother's facial features. How his sensei would use his own child to be the new host of the Kyuubi he would never know. Though Kakashi knew that this boy was a hero keeping an untamed beast at bay. Just as Kakashi was only a few minutes to the shelter, he found something that caught his eye in the sky. A dim glowing light that was covered by cloud. He stopped for a minute to get a close look as he got into view of the light. It was foreign, but something supernatural came into play from it. He could feel energy coming out of it, something similar to chakra. It didn't cross his mind though that it would be such a threat. Until it hit him, that is. The sudden pressure hit him, causing him to be pulled up towards the light. He grunted as he moved around, trying to reach out for a branch with a single arm, but his hands were too out of reach. He could feel Naruto moving around a bit, stirring as he began to slightly wail. Kakashi and Naruto were sucked up into the benevolent light. Kakashi was spinning around as he tried his best to hold Naruto in his grasp. Though one shift of speed tugged his forward and allowed him to loosen his grip on Naruto. Allowing them both to be separated. No. He thought as he tried to reach for the cloth only for Naruto to drift further away from him. His view of seeing Naruto faded as Naruto vanished into the light, leaving him to be blinded within the light as well. Naruto. He yelled as he disappeared out of existence. Outskirts of Acnologia, year 769. Ryusuke sighed as she sat on her chair. This night was already troublesome as it was. She looked at two beds that held two people on each one, a blonde-haired man in his early 20s and a long red-haired woman her age in the same area of age. Both were critically wounded on the ground when she found them near her home. A few minutes longer and both would have been dead if she hadn't healed their wounds. Both seemed to have had a massive strain on their bodies and must have had been in a tough fight. Though something was off about their magic power, it was a lot more concentrated per se, more heavier. Whoever these people were, they had power and that she could tell. Before she was about to check on their wounds once more and heal them, she saw a bright light come from the sky and paused lightly. Anima. She thought to herself as she headed out of her house. She headed out towards the woods and found what was a young man with grey hair and foreign type of armor on him. His unconscious body was lifeless as he groaned from the rush he had inside the anima. Great, another damn human, she muttered, narrowing her eyes as she huffed. She picked him up and slung his arm around her shoulder as she walked him to her house. He heard him mutter something, but could hear quite well. Curiosity got the best of her as she drew her ear close and decided to listen in. Naruto. Fish cake? Who the hell thinks of fish cakes? She thought as she brought the teen into her house. She didn't know what she was going to do with these three, maybe get their story first, probably tell Makarov about them and allow them to join their guild. Not like she needed them around here to bother her anyway, all three have become a hassle anyway, letting her do work at 2 in the morning. Elsewhere in Earthland. At the edge of a mountaintop, the sounds of a crying Naruto were heard as the sound echoed through the mountain ridge. The sounds of him wailing also brought him trouble as a wyvern flew down and landed just a few feet of him. The gray-skinned creature hissed lowly as its lower jaw drooled with hunger as it craved for the baby's flesh. It hadn't eaten in days, and a small morsel such as Naruto could keep his energy up for some time. Though the danger that was brought upon Naruto was not the wyvern. It was something much worse. A loud cry hit the skies of the mountain as it echoed loudly enough to startle the wyvern, sending it flapping its wings in such hurry to escape whatever was coming. A massive looming shadow loomed above Naruto. It was a dragon, near the size of Kyuubi, its black and blue scales dimmed in the moonlight as it landed on the peak of a small mountain, causing rubble to topple to the bottom floor. It gave a low growl as its pale eyes stared down upon the small infant. The dragon was Acnologia, the dragon of the apocalypse. He folded his feathery leathered wings as it slowly crept down to the child, starting down upon the newborn with its two massive set eyes. Humans as a whole to him were, simply to put words, inferior. He had no need to socialize or befriend them at all. He was not bound by such things to make peace with them, unlike those of his other dragon kin. He was the most feared dragon in history, he was bound by none of the other dragons' laws made by the Dragon King, and he had no interest aside destroying those insect-like humans, especially Zeref, the Dark Mage. The while he was annoyed by the child's wailing cries, which made him want to throw the baby. He had a curious interest about this boy. The boy's magic potency was strong in mass, more denser than mages much older than him. The only person he would compare this child to was Bloody Zeref. Though he could smell it off the child. a power that could rival his own. If this child were to live, he would be dangerous to live. His talon slowly came down until he stopped for a moment. An idea came across his mind as it bore a toothy grin. He would use this child against Xerath. If the child could no defeat the Dark Mage, he could at least hope to hurt him bad enough to make sure that even he, the dragon that could make an era come to an end, kill Xerath. He decided to make this boy the perfect weapon, the perfect dragon slayer. This shall be interesting, don't you agree, Ninjin? He spoke to young Naruto as he grabbed him carefully into his massive hand and flew off into the night. Chapter 2. The beginning of 3. Blue eyes had opened to the brightness of sunshine within the room, the intensity brought him out of his tired state. Minato rubbed his face as he dozed off once more, but rose up quickly feeling the strain on his body. He was surprised, one moment he and Kushina were near death, and now he awoken in a bed. He didn't understand how he survived such a dangerous blow from a massive beast such as Kyuubi, but he was pleased that he at least lived through that and the Shiki Fuijin. He raised his shirt up slightly and noticed a pink scar on his stomach area, massive as it stretched a foot or so horizontally. He was surprised at this, not even Tsunade's medical jutsu could heal a fatal wound that deep without taking a huge strain. Though Tsunade wasn't in the village when the Kyuubi attacked, so it had to be someone of great medical degree to heal this massive wound. He heard a slight sound of snoring. Looking to his left, he saw a bundle of red hair snuggling up to a blanket with bed hair. He felt a huge weight on his shoulders disappear, moving off the bed he laid on and knelt down to his beloved sleeping wife. He searched within the bedding to reach for her hand. Once he felt he intertwined his fingers with her own and brought them to his face, kissing her wrist ever so softly. Kushina too was alive. Minato felt such happiness build up in him that them were still alive, that they could see their son. He ceased the feelings of joy and relief, pausing for some time, thinking over the past current events carefully. The Shiki Fuijin, Kyuubi nearly killing them, Haki Fuin, lastly a light that enveloped them. Such light that enveloped them that he believed it to be his very soul being taken out of his body by the Shinigami to be in his stomach for all eternity. How did they survive? He wondered as he looked around the room. It was filled with potions and books as he slowly got up to look at them, releasing his hand from Kushina's. He wandered toward the bookshelves and noticed quite a number of books based upon magic and potions. Now this confused Minato indeed, who in the right mind would believe in sorcery of all things. Sure, shinobi could use chakra unlike many of the civilians that live within villages like Konohagakure, but that didn't mean they believe in magic as well. The one thing that interested him the most were the fact that there was no scrolls, just books on medical potions. Where were they? Suddenly the door opened as a figure draped in a foreign dress came in. He dark pink hair as in a bun, and he age was showing their natural feature of a woman in her 50s. Though she had her eyes boring onto him like she could see through him. Everything was quiet for a second. Neither she or Minato said a word. Minato being the gentleman that he was decided to speak X. Wham! Instantly Minato got his face smashed in by a massive book that the woman hidden in her long coat. He groaned lightly as rubbed his nose making sure it wasn't broken. Welcome to the world of the living ninja, Perusuka said as she looked at Minato. Human. What ab his words stopped as another book slammed into his groin area. He fell to his knees as he cradled his family jewels, hoping to relieve the pain he had unnecessarily needed. I wasn't finished speaking, brat, she said as she walked over to him and grabbed him by his cheek and pushed him down on the bed he slept in. Stay still so I can check on your wound. She told him as she pulled up his shirt to examine the scarring and tissue. As she was examining him, Minato stayed silent until he had spoken up. Excuse me, but where am I? In my house, where else would you be? She said, getting up and walking towards one of her potion set, grabbing one of the vials in the set. Minato's sweat dropped lightly. Not exactly what I meant. I mean, where am I? Perusuka walked back to the bed and handed Minato the vial drink, she said as she pulled a stool toward her and sat on it. She looked at Minato and spoke with ever so calmness. You are near the outskirts of Magnolia town, in a place called Earthland. She said. Minato looked at her and felt like she was pulling his leg, but he could simply tell she was serious. There was no place in the elemental nations known as Magnolia, nor was there a place called Earthland. This place was a foreign place to him as it was. How he stopped to think, not expressing the words to say. How you and Kushina managed to get here. She finished his words for him. Quite honestly, the only thing I can say how is that you were sucked up by anima, an interdimensional gate that absorbs magic power. You mean like a space-time jutsu? Minato asked. Similar to that, you could say. It's a difficult process, and it's something different than your jutsu as you and that young lad mentioned. My guess is that the anima sense a powerful energy signature which absorbed you and your wife. She said to Minato, closing her eyes. How do you know these things, jutsu, me and Kushina being married? He asked. Not long after you came, a young boy by the name of Kakashi was absorbed as well. He told me most of the things that I currently know about your world, from your village, your marriage, and your supposed death by a powerful demon," she said. Minato stared down for what seemed like hours in his mind. Kakashi was here too. What did that mean? Did that mean Kakashi was in a near-death state because of Kyuubi? He gripped the covers of the sheets and swallowed saliva down his throat. "Is Kakashi okay?" he asked. "Of course the brat's okay, he's bringing me some firewood at the moment. I tell you the brat is lazy, it took a book in his family jewel to actually do some damn work around here while taking care of your weak selves for the last 3 weeks." She said, "Now hurry up and drink the damn potion and quit asking questions. I have to wake your dead-asleep wife by slapping her silly." Minato shuddered at the thought of Kushina waking up in a bad way, the one thing he wouldn't do after the first moment of sleeping together. He looked at the vial, a purple color liquid that smelled like spices. Minato took one large gulp out of the small vial. The moment he felt the taste in his taste buds, he almost wanted to spit back out. He coughed several times before looking back at Perusuka, who slapped Kushina lightly. Seeing that Kushina sifting her body slightly, Minato moved back a bit on the bed and covered himself in the sheets. Kushina, who had woken up, stared at Perusuka with dreary tired eyes and yawned. "Minato, why did your face turn into such an ugly hag?" she whined. Little would Kushina realize, before she could have her wrathful awakening, Perusuka would have her wrath. After minutes of a catfight and Kushina submitting to the words of Perusuka, everything was calm enough to explain the situation to Kushina, whom seemed shocked but also worried. Kakashi walked in with a small bag of lumber wood, looked to find his sensei and wife in good condition once more. He had discussed with them about the situation he was in when he saw the anima suck both him and Naruto into the gate. Him separating from Naruto. Kushina, whom was worried, was now terrified. "My baby Naruto is out there somewhere unprotected, oh Kami," Kushina said as tears ran down her face. Kakashi lowered his head with guilt. "I'm sorry. There's nothing I can say that will make up for my mistake." The young jonin received a pat on his shoulder as Minato gave him a sad smile. "It wasn't your fault, Kakashi, how would you have known an event like this would have occurred? He said you did your best keeping him safe for a short time." Minato looked at Perusuka and said softly, "You say the anima is a machine that absorbs magic energy, correct?" Perusuka nodded. "So far it does seem to do that, though of course it doesn't feed on certain magic energies like Dragon Slayer magic." "What if it can absorb chakra as well?" he asked. "From what I can tell, chakra and magic are the same thing, though with chakra it's denser because you use less of the physical energies and a little more of the spiritual energies. My guess, if it absorbed up, it was because it pinpointed a large quantity of chakra. That chakra being of course from the Bijuu you call Kyuubi, right, the one you sealed in your son?" Perusuka asked. "Yes. Though when Kyuubi was sealed, it must have picked up the traces of its chakra on us, therefore sucking us inside the anima. Then when it picked up traces of it on Naruto, it must have absorbed him and Kakashi as well," Minato said. Perusuka mumbled something to herself and sighed. "Alright," she got up from her stool and walked into the back room, coming back a few seconds later with Minato's flak jacket and trench coat. "I had the option to fix your clothing up for you, should be as good as they once were," she said. "Thank you," was all he said as he put on his green shinobi flak jacket and his trench coat over it. Perusuka opened the door for the three and looked at them. "Come with me, it's best if you stay with this person. I don't like humans, so you three being here will just be an annoyance," she said as they walked outside. She closed the door behind her and took lead towards Magnolia Town. "I'm sure once you are taken care of here you will have enough manpower to search for your son." Fairy tale. In the town of Magnolia, the home of the strongest guild in Earthland, which is none other than Fairy Tail. A dwarf-sized man in his early 50s was sitting in the guildmaster's chair reading paperwork. He groaned slightly as he rubbed his head. Even though Fairy Tail was the greatest guild, there was little problem that all the mages in Fairy Tail possessed. The knack of destruction they bring during missions. He swore that if he saw another set of paperwork he would go insane. He heard a knock on his door and raised his head up slightly. "Come in." Once the door opened, a boy about the age of 7 with blonde hair and blue eyes opened the door. "Ah, Laxus my boy, what is it?" "Dai-san, Perusuka Bachan is here with some weird people." Young Laxus said as his grandfather, Makarov. Makarov raised a quizzical brow. "Strange, she rarely comes here unless it was something important," he thought as he got up from his seat. "Thank you, Laxus, now go ahead and join the others downstairs," he said, watching the young boy leave. Makarov walked downstairs to meet Perusuka. He had noticed the unfamiliar people with her. He walked up to her speaking calm and clearly. "So is there something you needed from me?" "Yes." She pointed at Minato and spoke. "This is Minato Namikaze, the others are his wife Kushina and his student Kakashi Haddock." She looked back at Makarov. "They were sucked in by anima." "So they are from Idolas, I presume?" he asked. "Not exactly, though I'll explain to you in private." Right now I want you to let them join your guild. They don't know around the place and I need you to help them. She said their son is missing and has something that could be used as a weapon, something dangerous. Makarov rubbed the top of his head in a deep though, yet another thing that would be brought to him. As complicated as things were, there was no excuse for him not to help these people. Alright, I'll let them join, but after this you owe me an explanation, he said as looked at the three, shinobi. He slowly raised his hand and then smiled lightly, welcome to Fairy Tale Minato. Minato looks Kushina who smiles lightly and looks back at Makarov, taking the older man's hand into a firm grip. Thank you for letting us join. He said. Magnolia Town year 776. Minato sat at the table in Fairy Tale, wearing a newly costumed maid flak jacket, though retained the same white trench coat with flames on it. Though by his chest he wore a pin which had the symbol of the wizard saints. During the last several years, Minato had risen to become appointed as one of the 10 wizard saints. He was dubbed as what he was originally once called Kiroi no Senko, due to his signature technique, the well-known Hiraishin. Kakashi became an S-class mage by the age of 17, well known by the alias as Fairy Tale's assassin due to his unique shinobi skills of stealth, while using mostly his 3 main skills of a ninja. Kushina within the first 2 years of entering Eaterland became a S-class mage, her skills with Fuinjutsu, Kinjutsu and Ninjutsu made her skills well known throughout the land. Thus she was dubbed as Fairy Tale's Benihim, for not just her beauty equal to that of a goddess, but for her sheer fury and resilience as a powerful fighter. The last 9 years, Minato and Kushina had been searching long and hard for their child. With Minato's title as a wizard saint, he would be able to gain some information within the Magic Council, as well as gain information possible. Both they and Kakashi took mission from searching within the mountains to taking down dark guilds for any information or hope their son was in there. Though there was none, not a single ounce of intel or knowledge from any mage they encountered, from every guild. He leaned his elbows on the table, lowering his head with a single straining thought on his mind. I will find you Naruto, I swear my life on it. Somewhere in deep cavernous caves. Acnologia was pleased, no he was much more than pleased. He was feeling the pride of being successful. For the last 10 years he trained this young child from the basics from walking to speaking fluently at such a young age. He trained this child to the bone for 6 years, no remorse, no rest. Not until he made this young boy not a man, but something much dangerous. He had ensured that there was rage in this boy's heart, while he possessed the body of a mere human, he had possessed the rage and means of a dragon. A rage just like his own. The perfect dragon slayer. Though with that power within him, if he could master it as how he used it that time long ago, then he would be accepted as more than just a dragon slayer in Acnologia's eyes. He would be his blood, his kin. Once he defeated Zeref and destroy all his creations, then there would be a near unstoppable force. While he had to admit, deep inside the boy, there was still humanity in him, he had doubt that side would come out. Not after what that boy had lost. He had felt some remorse, maybe pity for the boy's pain for that moment, but that pain made the boy what he was today, and he made him understand how much humans can be ignorant and compelled by evil desires within them. All this boy had to do now was train 1 more year, learn the secrets of his dragon-slaying powers, learn to make them his own and hone them. Until he does that, then Acnologia could train him in the final lesson. That lesson was Dragon Force. Acnologia had a low growl emanating from his throat as he gave a low roar towards a small cave. It was silent for a moment until a roar busted within the cave, blowing like a gust of wind at Acnologia. While unaffected the dragon was to the roar, the trees beside him began to bend back, some of the closer ones began to snap and fall to the ground, giving a heavy thump. Once the roar died down Acnologia gave a toothy smile. He heard footsteps from the dark cave entrance. With his pale white eyes, he could see a small figure come out, close to 4 feet and 11 inches. The figure that came out was a boy, with wild blonde hair and whiskers on the side of his face. He wore a black tank top and shorts with grey shoes, his sharpened canines gave a twisted fox-like grin, and his icy clue-slit eyes gave only rage from them. Time to train now Naruto, Acnologia said. The 10-year-old gave a low animalistic growl as he chuckled, feeling the wind blow into his hair. He felt black lightning crackle around his body. Pack 8 koi, bring it on, Naruto said. And? You. Told you I might put in a little Naruto in there. I'm probably going to change the time in which Naruto, Kakashi, Kushina, and Minato in Earthland to 766 instead of 769, cause the fact that Naruto would be 15 and 784 would seem awkward. It would be easier if he would be around 17 or 18 in that time. I'm glad I finished this chapter this week instead of next cause I feel I want to real action to start next week. First of to everyone who thought that this chapter was boring cause it had no action, I'm sorry, next chapter you'll see plenty of action, I promise you that. This chapter was a big if for me because I wanted to make a piece for the other 3 before Naruto ever met them. Secondly, for those who want this to be more than just Urza in this fanfiction, well, I might add Lucy or Kana in this to make it even out the balance. Urza for being strict and a good sparring partner, sometimes being motherly, while Lucy or Kana give Naruto some positives of humanity or give him peace within his heart, making him more human. Third, I decided that Naruto will have 2 types of magic skill set, maybe 3 before he learns shinobi skills. One of them of course being dragon slaying magic, the other is a hint I put in at the end. There will be a reason why or how Naruto gets this power, but that won't be explained until he gets some feelings in his heart. Lastly, I want to thank Lanky Nathan for inspiring me to do this. I probably would be stuck with writer's block on my book if he didn't help me get some of my original creativity back. Now that I am doing this, I can work on my book more. I also want to thank Heroes, Lanky Nathan, DENIM88 Manian, Kitsen Edrigan, and Soul Reaper crew. Their stories have inspired me to try and be a good fan fiction writer for just the fun of it. They also helped me as to the reason why I write and why I want my book to go far. So I want to say thank you to them, and I hope I can strive to write on here as much as you all do while not working on my own projects. You all, in my opinion, are the best writers I've seen. First off, I want to say it's a great pleasure of having Kitsun Dragon as my beta for this story, and I am happy to have Lanky Nathan, who gave me some comforting advice on the start of this story. Secondly, for those who noticed that the poll is closed, it has come to majority vote that Seiryuu is his style of dragon slaying magic. Also described as Yami no Mitsuru Meiho. I felt that adding Torateru or Akumeryu would be simple, but then I realized Acnologia was also known as the Black Dragon. I could have added Kakuryu, but I think Seiryuu sounds more suitable. Lastly, I come to decide that this will be more suitable as a 1x1 relationship, so no harem. While I agree with some people's reasons on making it, I believe that one person is enough to make Naruto regain parts of his humanity, while there are friends who will push him to be more human, as well as he comes to understand the bonds of Thinakam around him. Also, for those who thought that the black lightning was a type of lightning magic, you are somewhat correct. I will explain it after this chapter. Humans are arrogant and foolish, they hide their greed with words of false truth and harm one another to appease their violent nature. They are nothing more than maggots that aren't even worth a breath of life. Acnologia. Last chapter. Acnologia had a low growl emanating from his throat as he gave a low roar towards a small cave. It was silent for a moment until a roar busted within the cave, blowing like a gust of wind at Acnologia. While unaffected the dragon was to the roar, the trees beside him began to bend back, some of the closer ones began to snap and fall to the ground, giving a heavy thump. Once the roar died down, Acnologia gave a toothy smile. He heard footsteps from the dark cave entrance. With his pale wide eyes, he could see a small figure come out, close to 4 feet and 11 inches. The figure that came out was a boy, with wild blonde hair and whiskers on the side of his face. He wore a black tank top and shorts with grey shoes, his sharpened canines gave a twisted fox-like grin, and his icy clue-slit eyes gave only rage from them. "Time to train now," Naruto, Acnologia said. The 10-year-old gave a low animalistic growl as he chuckled, feeling the wind blow into his hair. He felt black lightning crackle around his body. "Hakate koi, bring it on," Naruto said. Chapter 3. Nest within darkness. The first years of Naruto's life was simple. As a child he was remarkably smart for his age. Learning to walk at the age of 9 months, reading at the age of 3, writing and learning both Earthland's history and mathematics at the age of 5. Acnologia was amazed by the child's genius and astounding traits. At such a young age, Naruto had just proven he was worthy of being his foster son, not just because of his unnatural density of magic, but the knowledge that the boy had grown over the years. On the 6th year of Naruto's life, he started his training. There was no time for this child to be babied, nor be treated like the child he was. If this boy was going to master Acnologia's magic Mei no Metsurukmeiho, then he was going to have to grow up and become something different than the other dragon slayers. He would become a being of power, a dragon in human form. After all, raise a child to become a beast and he shall be so. So that is what the Black Dragon did. For the past 4.5 years Naruto had evolved from being a child of pure heart to a boy whose rage knows absolutely no bounds. At some points, it is silent as the wind itself, but most times now, it had shown itself in a malicious way. Destructive like a storm, just like Acnologia. Naruto looked at his foster father with a malicious grin, popping his knuckles. The sound echoed through the cave. "So what kind of training are we doing today, San?" "Same as usual?" asked Naruto. "Not exactly, our training will have to be short this time. You're almost ready to prove yourself that you are worthy of using my strongest secret technique." Acnologia told the boy as he grabbed a set of 12 boulders, 6 medium, 6 large. Naruto smirked due to his curiosity, but if he was going to learn the ultimate technique, he would have to make this training fast. He noticed Acnologia's tail raised halfway and prepared himself for the first set of boulders come at him. Once the massive whip-like tail struck the 6 medium-sized boulders, they moved at rapid speeds towards the blonde. Naruto grinned as he rushed with great speed towards the boulders. With amazing reflexes, he leaped over one boulder and landed on the ground before going into a roll as he landed so that he would avoid being struck by the second and third boulders. He performed a cartwheel to avoid the fourth and backflip to avoid the fifth. As he was in the middle of his backflip, the sixth boulder raced towards him. However, the blonde dragon slayer managed to complete said flip and planted his feet against the rough surface of one of the boulders he had dodged. He tensed his leg muscles and pushed off, rearing his fist back. With a roar, the blonde slammed his fist against a large sphere of rock and shattered it as if it were made of glass. Naruto landed on the ground and shaking his hand lightly, he chuckled. He knew he would have to work on punching those boulders. Though his real test was the massive size ones, each one weighing about a ton or so. Acnologia shot the first boulder with his tail aiming directly at Naruto. Naruto, holding his ground, held his hands out. Once his hands were met with the feeling of the boulder's rough surface, the impact came in. His feet were skidding on the rough ground before he came to a halt. He threw the large mass to the side, only for another boulder to come towards him in a matter of seconds. As the boulder went towards him, it simply went through Naruto. It crashed into the mountainside and tumbled down off the ledge. Naruto reappeared by the entrance of the cave and frowned as he glared at his surrogate father. "Quit testing me and launch the rest of those damn boulders," he said in a cold empty voice. His after-image having long since vanished after the use of his high levels of speed. Acnologia snarled as he raised his tail halfway once more and whipped his tail at a quick speed, sending the remaining 2-ton boulders toward the blonde at high speeds. Naruto grinned as he inhaled air. "Myrick no Dangan," he yelled as he shot 4 small-sized black balls of energy at the boulders. Once colliding, the force of the impact turned the rocks to dust by the effects of the darkness magic. One larger boulder came into place and Naruto thrust his fist forward. Seiryuu no Kagekin's fist collided with the boulder, breaking it into smaller segments. Acnologia looked at Naruto and growled in a calmly manner as he lowered his head to look at the small boy. "Good precision on your aim, ninja. I'll be pleased to let you know what your next step of training will be before you obtain the last technique of my dragon slaying magic." "What's this next step of training supposed to be?" asked Naruto. "It is not going to be simple for you, boy. At this point you will be fated at killing this creature. The Black Dragon said. Only after defeating this enemy I shall teach you the secrets. The true secrets of obtaining dragon force." Naruto, tempted to learn the ultimate level in which all dragon slayers could obtain, never felt that it would be so easy. Though it was as such temptations that lead his emotions to suspicion. What would the price of gaining the full potential of his power? "And what do I have to do in order to gain the secrets of dragon force?" he asked with no hint of emotion, not even a hint of worry in his words. Whatever challenge his father prepared for him, he would accept it. "Naruto, what is the one thing you hate other than humans, my boy? The dragon spoke as it noticed a firm fist forming in his son's hand. "I can sense your anger slowly building it. It is indeed those wyverns that you hate so much, though I care none for them as well. As much as you hate those sub-dragons, they can be quite strong, especially their magic. Though you will be facing something much more difficult than a normal wyvern, you'll be facing the alpha male. The dragon told Naruto. Acnologia raised his giant hand, pointing his sharp claw towards east of the mountains to find a short dome-like peak about 10 miles from where they stood. Within that peak Naruto lays one of the mountain wyvern nesting grounds. In that nest lays an alpha male mountain wyvern. The dragon lowered his hand and looked back at Naruto. "I want you to kill that alpha male and any wyvern that stands in your way. Kill it, show no mercy to any as my dragon slayer." Naruto looked towards the dome peak with a passive look upon his face. Calm on the inside, but on the outside, he was boiling with pleasure. He wanted to kill those wyverns, how he despised them, especially the one he killed with that power. Flashback. X772. It was a stormy afternoon, the humidity in the air was cold and lightning crackled into the sky. 6-year-old Naruto was waiting on Acnologia to come home with a large meal for both him and Naruto to be satisfied for the day. He had only learned one move of his father's dragon slaying arts and he had not even begun to fully hone the technique. Hopefully the young Naruto believed that this storm would last overnight and he would begin learning something new in his first weeks of training. Naruto, silently reading his book over the sounds of heavy rain, heard loud flapping and looked over to the entrance of the large cave. He could barely see, but he had noticed a somewhat vague shadow coming towards the mountain ridge. He slowly got up to take a better look at it. It was small, but it was somewhat distant, so he really couldn't tell the size of the flying shape. Though he figured it was Acnologia, the shape was almost identical, flapping wings, nearly identical features from afar. Naruto thought it would be best if he just waited inside for him to come. An hour had passed and he had grown impatient, his hunger went from mild to vast. He thought that the dumb dragon would hurry himself up, but he took his damn time. Though it wasn't long before Naruto heard a small thump that had shaken the cave lightly, causing some debris to fall. Was Acnologia trying to cause the cave to come down upon him? He heard movement from above and stirred lightly with caution as he heard foreign growling from the outside. That wasn't Acnologia. He stood up slightly as he felt a thump on the ground as a head came into place in front of his vision. It certainly wasn't Acnologia. This creature had several sharp plates going towards the back of its head. Its green eyes looking around at the outside world. It was a bronze color and its set of teeth showed like a crocodile's from its upper jaw. Talons were on its wings as it walked on them, hunched down slightly. This creature wasn't Naruto's surrogate father. This was a wyvern. Naruto took a few steps back, hitting a small rock with his feet as it bounced lightly. He cursed to himself, hoping that the sub-dragon wasn't looking inside the cave. However, it was and it stared at Naruto, snapping its jaws as it gave a shrieking roar. It slowly came inside the cave, coming for the young blonde. Naruto took a few steps back as he tripped over a decent-sized rock. He crawled back with fear in his heart, he could feel the blood in his skin shriveling back into his quicken-paced heart. He was trapped within this cave and he couldn't do a simple thing to escape. He could try to escape underneath the wyvern, but then the beast would probably just squish him. Naruto, panicking, grabbed a couple rocks and threw them at the beast, one of them hitting it square in the eye. This was young Naruto's mistake as the blow had succeeded in infuriating the wyvern. But the swift swipe of its wing, Naruto was slammed into the rocky wall, crying out in sheer pain as blood came down his forehead. He was on his knees, feeling his head when suddenly all time seemed to have stopped as he felt like he lost all feeling in his body. His eyes looked to his right as he saw blood trailing down from his right shoulder and down his arm. A deep gash had formed from his impact, whether it was from the wing strike or the fact that he slammed into the hard rock wall, he did not know. However, that gash had cut through the nerves and muscles of his back, blood pouring from the wound. He couldn't speak, he didn't want to speak, the pain was just so unbearable that he could only gasp out air. One more blow, then another from the beast as he smacked Naruto round like it was swatting a fly with its wing. Naruto skidded on the ground as he lay there, nearly dead. He could hear the thudding footsteps of the beast, the tips of its wings skidding on the walls of the dark cave. Its heated, disgusting breath hit Naruto just a few feet away from the blonde. He couldn't do anything, he couldn't run, he couldn't call for Acnologia. Though he knew the dragon would see this as a moment of weakness, even if Naruto was unprepared for something such as this. In a matter of moments he was going to be Wyvern Chow. How screw-up was that for the blonde? That made him irritated more than fearful now. He could feel his fight-or-flight instincts kicking in, his anger and fear boiling within his body and turning it. He remembered what Acnologia told him once when he found him a wyvern was about to eat him. When he first saw mountain wyverns, he saw they had aggressive behaviors to each other and attacked those without second thought. They were the kind of animal that doesn't think when it acts, it just attacks. That fear came to him when he was younger. Though he was different now, he knew the aspects of him fighting one was inevitable, but to be so soon. He was angry because he wanted a fight that he deemed worthy when it came to those beasts. He was pissed he was going to die this way. He wasn't going to accept it. He growled lightly, his body heating up as he felt a presence within him, it wasn't much, but it was indeed noticeable. And it was luring him to hear its words. Fill, maim, destroy, tear, crush, rip, shred. Naruto felt the heat of his body increase even more as the presence within him was growing more, he could feel a foreign energy around him. It was so much denser than magic, but it was addicting and it felt like he was high on pure rage. His wounds on his body healed, his head healed at a quick pace, the large gash was slowly closing as he could feel the nerves and muscle re-stitch themselves as the tissue of his muscle and skin was regenerating at an astounding rate. All that was left of the deep elongated wound was just a light peach-colored scar that was slowly fading from Naruto's back. Naruto could hear the words repeat themselves once more over and over again, the energy was now different this time, it grew so intoxicating, the energy bubbled outside of his body, surrounding his body as it covered him, manipulated into a form. His eyes felt like they were burning, massive rush into his eyes as he opened them, everything felt so surreal, as if he was seeing all the essence of hatred around him. He could feel the change of his body, canines lengthened and sharpened, his nails doing the same as they became more like claws, his hair becoming wild and bushy. His eyes were covered by his hair, hearing the words one last time he slowly repeated them. Fill, maim, destroy, tear, crush, rip, shred. He finally stopped for a moment as he felt the movement of sentient energy around him. The movement of one single tail. He gave a feral grin with sharp slit red eyes. Slaughter. He shot his hand forward as a hand made from the energy launched toward the wyvern wrapping around the creature's neck. The creature roared as its neck was being squeezed. Trying to escape the grip, it yanked its head around. Though it wasn't enough, the sentient energy forced a dragon's head through a cave wall before pulling its head out quickly and driving it once more on the other side. Once the head of the sub-dragon was pulled out, the scales were shown to be cracking, and blood coated the wyvern's head and jawline, showing the teeth were chipped and ruined. Naruto let the grip of the energy go on the wyvern as he jumped over the beast and smashed his fist into the beast's head, causing the wound on the skull to crack open much more than it was before. Naruto remained on top of the beast's head, using both arms to send out the lengthened arms of energy, once more to the base of the wyvern's wings. They held a firm grip as they tugged hard onto the wings. One tug caused the wyvern to cry out as it fought to retain its wings, but that was its mistake. Snap. A loud cry of pain as the wyvern shrieked, one of its wings dislocated, the other pulled off its body like papier match. It gave a curdling cry as it slumped its head, heavily breathing as the blood poured from its left side. Naruto slid off the wyvern's body and walked to face it. The tail of energy slowly wrapped around the reptile's neck as it constricted around its airways. Slowly the beast moved, but it slowly gave into defeat as its eyes slowly dilated and they rolled into the back of its head and its body slumped. Naruto released the lesser dragon as its head slumped onto the ground. He could feel the power he craved so much, slipping from his fingers. The red mass slowly went back inside his body, causing Naruto to feel the backlash of the strain that the energy put on his small body. His mind slowly receded into the depths of his being. The last thing he saw before passing out was the pale eyes of Acnologia. Flashback end. Naruto's hair covered his head as he spoke softly. "So how long do I need to take?" he asked quietly. "No less than tomorrow night, I expect you to be done. If any stand in your way, crush them. I will come to see if you have completed your task then. If you are dead, then that is my fault in which I thought you would be ready. However, if you haven't met my standards in killing an alpha male mountain wyvern." He stopped as lowered his head toward Naruto. "You will have only 30 seconds before I eradicate your entire existence from the face of this land. By then you probably wouldn't have enough energy to stand, let alone escape," said to the blonde. Naruto chuckled for a moment, hiding his facial features until he laughed with maniacal glee. "Tomorrow night?" he asked as he looked at the dark dragon with bloodlust in his eyes. "Give me tonight and you will find me basking in the blood of my kills and you will have yourself a feast of wyvern flesh." Naruto raised his hand and quickly darkness hand enveloped it and formed it into a claw. Black lightning enveloped Naruto as he grinned madly with high expectations to kill a worthy enemy. "Tonight a dark storm would cover these mountains and only you and I will know death of a wyvern nesting ground. Only when I succeed, I will be one step closer to becoming something that no human will reach," he said, closing his dragon-like hand into a fist. Acnologia was giving a toothy smile of twisted euphoria, seeing his surrogate son state his goal for this night. Seeing his creation build and take darkness within him. He had not just made this child become a monster, he made him closer to anything that could be considered a dragon. One who would see humans as their enemy and consider them a threat. A dragon with a vendetta in his mind. If only the boy was born one, he would be perfect. Though this boy would satisfy him by becoming the killer of Zeref if he obtained the full potential he has. "I expect much from you then tonight, boy. I will be sure to see if you have done the deed." Acnologia said, "No, go, slay the alpha and kill his mates." Naruto, giving a sly grin, released a magic seal upon his back. Seiryuu no Tsubasaiance. The seal broke Naruto's back had envelopes wings made of darkness, wings similar to his father's, as they flapped at a repetitive rate. Naruto launched himself into the air and quickly flew off toward the dome mountain peak. Minute after arriving, Naruto wandered into the large entrance of the dome peak. The tunnel would be about the size of Acnologia, meaning the inside was probably bigger, a perfect place for a nesting ground of any type of creature. He had heard the low growls of the sub-dragons as he walked closer, the shrieks of them fighting or nurturing their eggs. Once he got into the nesting area he saw hundreds of eggs, 51 wyvern overall. He could tell all the ones below were female, smaller, walking around the eggs like they were precious gems to be guarded, and precious gems they were. Until it was decided that those shining gems needed to be cracked. Naruto walked over to a single lone egg and put his foot on it. He whistled, causing the female wyvern to look over towards his direction. Smile, he shoved his foot into the egg, his shell cracking as the yolk spurted outward. Naruto smiled, receiving multiple shrieks of anger coming towards him as he shook his head. "I'm sorry, did I crack your egg? You must be broken-hearted, oh well. Now playing Wish I May by Breaking Benjamin." Naruto watched as 5 of the female wyvern walked around him, circling him once he had no way to escape. Black lightning enveloped his body, and slowly the wind blew into the cavernous dome. One thing he knew about darkness was that it was an energy source over all elements, similar to light. It could be a negative form of an element, a form that could envelop enemies into the dark void. He smiled as one of the wyverns snapped at him, and he instantly raised his hand by instinct. "Raiju no Arashi." Ran Kaminara said as a gust of wind surrounded the beast and a sound of static filled the air. A shriek of pain was released as a black ball of lightning struck one of the reptilian beasts, sending it into two others of its kind and making an explosion that sounded like thunder coming from where the wyvern had hit. Naruto's hand gave off light smoke as rose his hand in the air and a magic circle came in front of him breaking as moved his hand quickly into a downward slash. Raiju no Arashi Shinjikiha. Quickly, the others before him were enveloped by black lightning, hitting each and every nerve in their bodies and into their central nervous system. After a minute of hearing shrieks from four immobilized wyverns, the silence came from their deaths. In return, the remaining members of the 50 growled with fury. 42 remained and he was loving to have some action as he popped his knuckles and grinned wildly. Now we're getting somewhere, he said as he rushed at the few dozen of mothers protecting their eggs. Few of the mothers tried to attack with their wings, but all Naruto did was go through them as an after image formed from the speed he used. He quickly circled the group as multiples of himself. However, those two were just after images caused by his speed. The real one was within them, charging his attack as inhaled air entered his lungs. Narukami no giving a loud once have his mouth filled with air. Hako shooting a blinding light from his mouth, hitting the ground of the mountain peak as it blew across half of the wyvern. Song end. While the dust dissipated, Naruto could see some of the wyverns were in critical condition, around 8 or so. Though others he could see were either just out cold or shaken by the blast. He hadn't honed his skills as a whole, even if he learned them quickly. He would have to do that when he had the time. A loud thud hit the dome, his ears twitched as he heard the sound. Slowly, he turned and soon after the ceiling crumbled as a massive head came out. A low growl of rage echoed through the blonde's ears as Naruto stared into a set of dark red eyes. He had come for what he was looking for and he found it, though not in the most expected of places. The ceiling rock hit the ground crushing the smaller wyvern females and eggs, allowing others to fly off in fear of the large alpha male. Some of the debris fell past Naruto as he quickly prepared a spell, however he was smacked by the wing of the giant beast, hitting the hard floor. The massive male stood tall and proud, its massive wingspan reached more than 3/4 the way of each side of the dome. Its gray, tough skin had scars from many fraught battles and bore a pair of sharp curved teeth that showed on its lower jaw. It was about a third the size of Acnologia, though that was nothing compared to the dragon, and it seemed to have a highly aggressive attitude as it had set its sights set on Naruto. Naruto exploded out of the crater, landing a few yards from the alpha male and huffed. His shirt had been tattered and there were scraps on his arms and face. "You seem pretty angry, don't you?" Naruto asked as he looked at the reptile. "And I would say you were a foolish ninja for coming here and killing my mate," said the alpha as Naruto gave him a quizzical look. Rare for one of things to even speak though as he got into position. "Nothing against you, but it's a mission I have to do. Besides," Naruto gave a dark look, "I hate your kind as it is, so cutting down your ranks shouldn't be so bad." The alpha wyvern growled in a threatening position, "Foolish ninja, you think you can come and waltz here and face me?" It said, inhaling as steam came from its nostrils. By instinct Naruto jumped out of the way as the wyvern shot out a ball of fire. Naruto looked back at the attack as it hit one of the corpses of the female wyverns, and as it hit the body, half the body was instantly ignited by the flame, eating half the body. Wyverns can't breathe fire, which means something is causing him to do so. Turned back and looked at the large male. "Seiryuu no Jagan," said as his eyes turned to a faint purple color with slits. He searched the confounds of the wyvern and noticed something within the dragon's chest area. It was a small spherical shape, but Naruto could tell what it was by the power it was showing. It was a lacrima, a flame lacrima. Figures. Can't breathe fire, so it made do with a lacrima, though how it came across one is rather intriguing. Naruto landed on his feet, looking at the beast with a dark, serious expression. "Seems you've got something inside of you, can't say I'm impressed by your handicapped power," he said, getting a loud roar in return. "One thing I can't stand other than you and humans, the fact that people can't gain their own sort of strength without the use of lacrima. It makes me pity them unless they have a power of their own aside from that. Something which you don't possess." He could hear the sub-dragon seething hot air as it shot several more intensely heated fireballs at Naruto, who in return, inhaled air. "Seiryuu no Mka," he yelled as he shot a medium-sized bolt of black energy, sending another after another, hitting all of the wyvern's fire attacks and coming to a stop. Seiryuu no Kakuenden, shooting a massive ball of darkness energy resembling flames, it came towards the alpha wyvern, who jumped into the air with impressive jumping power as he avoided the massive attack. Landing hard on the ground, his talons skidded on the rock as he felt the blast wave from the attack. Naruto looked at the giant wyvern and frowned slightly. This was going to take more time than he thought. Absorbing the magic, he might be able to, but he would have to worry about the beast's physique and tough skin. Fighting close combat would be an advantage for his small size though. He rushed towards the wyvern in a burst of speed and punched the wyvern's jaw, hitting him, and then went into a backflip, striking the reptile with a kick. However, it didn't seem to faze it as Naruto was struck by the talon on the wyvern's wing. A line of crimson formed on his body as the gash on his side immediately began to bleed. "Seiryuu no Yamanari," said Blonde yelled as his hands were covered by dark energy that manipulated into a twin stinger-like spear and quickly launched the piercing attack multiple times with force, only to leave small puncture wounds on the alpha's skin. For what seemed to be like hours, Naruto and the wyvern clashed non-stop. While Naruto had the upper hand in speed and magic power, the alpha wyvern brought strength and strong defense into the battle. Both, however, were resilient and only Naruto had the upper hand in terms of stamina. However, said stamina was quickly leaving him. While his magic power was large, his body itself couldn't hold the fortitude of power he needed to keep his stamina up for a long period of time. The sky was in a darkened state and from the looks of it, the time seemed to be around 8 in the evening or almost 9. Naruto, blood coming from his arm and head lined with bruises and slight fractured ribs, looked up at the sky and smirked lightly. "I guess I could do it now before never." He looked at the wyvern whose body had slight puncture wounds and slash marks from Naruto's dragon-slaying attacks, as well as a limping leg from a lightning-based attack. It was still standing strong and willing to fight. Though after this, it will yield in defeat by dying, otherwise Naruto will be his next meal. "I think it's time to get this over with," the boy said as he looked to see the darkened sky become clear, clouds parting to reveal shining stars in the sky and a crescent moon in view. Naruto raised his hand to the air, a magic circle of a large size was above the peak. "This attack will drain me of all I have, but it will be worth it," he said as he possessed an evil glint in his eyes. The wyvern snarled as he looked at the circle which slowly covered his being, even managing to dim the shine within his crimson eyes. He couldn't see well, but he noticed a black shape enveloping the peak. What is this?" "This is one of the secret techniques of my magic, though it is a unique technique that requires 70% of the user's magic power," Naruto stated with a face-splitting grin. "Be thankful that this attack is still in its imperfect stages with me, though you should be honored that you will be the first to witness it." But Seiryuu Ogi. Jam Bujutsu, the sphere that had formed, quickly expanded and just as quickly, minimized down into a sphere that encased both combatants. Naruto smiled with an empty look on his face once he was out of the sphere. This technique puts the enemy into a dark illusion, a never-ending sleep you could say, as they wandered into eternal darkness, as their body is being incinerated by the dark matter of the energy, leaving nothing but ash. After 5 minutes, the dark sphere slowly faded into the air. What was once that was the mighty wyvern was nothing more than his skeleton, which slowly turned into dust in the wind. Naruto, smiling with success, slowly closed his eyes, fell to his knees and hit the earth floor. Acnologia flew across the dome crater as night had come. Recently seeing the attack his surrogate son unleash was a sight to be seen. While the boy hadn't honed all of his skills, he had shown an impressive feat for holding control of Jujutsu. The boy had strength and he had the will to prove it as well. The black dragon landed on the rocky floor as he looked at all the eggs that had been destroyed, the female wyvern that had been killed by the impact Naruto had made. He had seen the boy on the ground with his wounds he noticed already starting to heal. The source that was healing the boy had given him quite an ability, even if it wasn't the blonde's personal strength. He picked up Naruto and rose his wings up, and after a few flaps from his wings, he was already in the air. Taking Naruto and himself to a new area to work on the boy's skills for the rest of the time he had with the boy. He didn't have time to let the boy leisure, it was almost X777 and he needed to search for his one main goal. Zeref. Year X777. Naruto looked over to his father as the dragon of the apocalypse looked to the sky. It had been 6 months of honing his skills with his father and 6 months of learning the secrets of Dragon Force to its full extent. Naruto put his hands in his pockets as he stared at Acnologia. "You sure you have to go early? It would be easier if I had truly honed all of my skills with you as my test dummy," he said. Received a low growl in return, not a threatening one at all, but an amused one. "It's not that simple, boy. I could work the extent of your dragon slaying powers, but with me you would have no experience, I wouldn't be truly harmed by your magic yet. You need to fight humans, show them true fear and prove your worth. Building up skill in true fights, honing your skills is just the other result that will make you better, unlike most ninja," he stated as he turned his head to stare at Naruto with one pale eye. "I have trained you well, Naruto. It's up to you though to prove your worth next time we meet. Become stronger, let that anger out on those you hate and detest, never let it consume you or your goals. Otherwise you would be no better than Zeref those years ago." The dragon's wings flapped lightly as his feet came off the ground. "Remember your promise, boy, your mission." The last words he said as he flew high into the sky, hiding into the clouds as he disappeared from Naruto's view. Naruto closed his eyes as he turned, preparing to leave the grounds that he trained in for the last 6 months. Grabbing his pack and slinging it around his shoulder, he looked back once more where the dragon disappeared in the skies above. He spoke the few parting words to the distant dragon. "Till we meet again, Acnologia," leaving out of the woods to start his journey. End. AU. Hot biscuits. This chapter was annoying to write. I wanted to not make this a two-part chapter, because if I did then it would have made some rather difficult scenes for the second part. Aside from that, I wanted to write more for you guys as my appreciation, so I wrote about almost 6.5k, though most of my work will be about 4 to at least 5.5k. Hopefully you liked this chapter, as my head was only 60% into it after the second part when Naruto was against the alpha male wyvern. I based the alpha on the similar aspect of the dragons from the movie Reign of Fire. Out of several dragons there is only one male in each generation, though I added my mix into it as well, such as the tough armor skin, red eyes, and massive size. I made the alpha around an A rank monster to beat. Now some might ask, why didn't Naruto just absorb the magic power from the wyvern's attacks? It's simple really. He hasn't been used to absorbing elemental magic techniques yet, he is used to getting the magic from Acnologia's attack that had been weakened, eating Lacrima Radonano from the air. I wanted this fight to be as difficult for him as it would be for the wyvern. Though he will consume magic from elemental magic, he just can't eat the natural element itself. Now for Naruto's other magic, a lost magic I call Raiju no Arashi in English terms. It's called either the Storm of the Thunder Beast or Thunder Beast Storm. It's basically the manipulation and fusion of wind and lightning. This magic is used for multiple uses from long range to close range. However, since Naruto hasn't used it often, it takes a toll on his body since he doesn't have the endurance yet to channel the energy without taking recoil. Though after next chapter it won't affect him because the next chapter will be when he is 14 and has honed his skills to near perfection. Is it like god slaying and dragon slaying? No, it's nothing like neither because the magic doesn't eat the magic or the element, it just manipulates it. Let's take for example Aragorn's Storm Mail or Raikage's Raiten no Yoroi. Naruto could basically make the same thing with both elements combined. Now back to the earlier relationship issue. People who are making a big deal for Erza as a relationship, I can understand why, but think about it, with Kusuhina there she would be somewhat different personally. She won't let her past conflict with her feelings as much, but it will still be there. Though she will be more outgoing, I guess you could say, and would more likely help Naruto through his darkness. Naruto has a dragon's attitude that will build up, but she will probably stabilize it. However, Erza is just an idea for this guys, the relationship hasn't even happened yet and it will take a while. I could easily just change it to Connor Marahin later p. Chapter 3. Shadows in the Lightning. Iraq 780. Now playing, this calling master by all that remains. The body hit the ground with a fumble as it became lifeless, blood coming from the deep stomach wound. The person who was killed was pale, his eyes rolled back. The sound of footsteps walked silently past him, followed by dark energy that took the form of flames surrounding him, incinerating his body into nothing. The entire compound was surrounded by this dark energy. It was slowly enveloped and the building slowly began to crumble. 5 people rushed into an open room corridor and shutting the door behind them, quickly covered the door with anything that was large enough in the room. The 5 people were of mostly male gender, only one female within the group. Fear gripped their hearts as they prepared to cast their magic. It was silent, though they heard small footsteps come and the sound of steel skidding on the ground. One of the males clenched her teeth in fear as he took a step back. "He's coming." He stuttered out loudly. "Shut up, keep your head in the game. We need to stay calm, otherwise we'll be slaughtered like the others," yelled the leader of the group. He too was in fear of this apparition, this being who came into the guild without permission and killed their friends and members without a moment's hesitation. Their guild master even came to fight the person, and he too had perished within the black energy. The man didn't know who or what this monster was, but he wanted to escape alive. His train of thought was instantly lost when the footsteps stopped. He and the other members looked at the only entryway into the room, but sadly, it was the only way out as well. One kick into the door and everything flew across the room past the 5. The figure stood around 5'6" with wild blonde hair and sharp azure-colored eyes with cat-like pupils, his eyes somewhat of a slanted shape, giving off a sinister appeal to them. He wore a long black cloak-like jacket with a white collar and black pants tucked into black boots. Underneath the jacket was a black undershirt. In his right hand, he held a thin Chinese broadsword made out of black steel. It glowed slightly under the dark hue of the negative energy that manifested around the area. The blonde looked at the 5 members of the torn down, nearly eradicated, dark guild with cold empty eyes. He looked at each one carefully, one by one. It was as if he was sensing the level of fear they all possessed with his eyes, said eyes slowly changing from their initial blue into a pale white. All of them were weak-willed, and he alone could sense the dread that was coming off them like whimpering dogs. It gave him such pleasure in doing something that would break a human being's sanity to the point of no return after seeing so much chaos in a place they all felt so protected in. So are you all going to give up or shall you make this harder on yourselves? The voice coming from the figure said. It sounded like nothing more than a teenager, but it was mature and it brought such a cold feeling to it with said maturity. The members felt their legs tremble, though it was the leader who shook his head and glared at the young male. Who the hell do you think you are? We are of the Dark Guild, Black Zodiac. He yelled. He looked at the others and yelled out them attack now. Soon all of their magic seals appeared and broke as they all yelled out their attacks in unison. Oku no Kiri. Kuroi T. Inferno Shuriken. Isator Shadow. Kaidane Najanada. An explosion occurred as the attacks collided, hitting the male directly. It blew the whole corridor down from the entrance that the figure came from to the walls. The magic that they used though remained, they believed they had won, that they had defeated the single enemy. However, that was all but true. Suddenly the halberd that had been used from one of the dark mages had flown at its owner, impaling him chest, sending the weapon and his body into the wall where he hung lifelessly. I suppose it's the latter. Then a voice came from within the fiery magic as the magic was slowly being absorbed. The man had feasted on the magic like it was a measly snack. His fingers touched his lips as he burped steam from his mouth. Well, I suppose I should end it now as it is holding his blade. He blurred out of sight and within seconds he cut down the leader of the group who had not time in his mind to process on what happened. The other three hurtled together on the wall, hitting the solid mass as they could walk no further. This man, no monster, killed all the guild members and their guildmaster this whole time. No matter how much they were going to try and face him, they knew it was inevitable to win, let alone harm him. The three then saw it, the dark magic radiating from his body like it was alive itself. His eyes grew pale as they stared at them as if those eyes were staring down into their souls, burning them out of their bodies. Well, since this will be the last moment of your existence, allow me to make your end quick. I have much to accomplish and getting rid of all the hassling humans that meddle with my mission will certainly regret crossing paths with me. The blonde raised his hand and quickly black lightning enveloped his hand and held it out to their direction. Raiju Bakudan. The black lightning shot out, taking a form of a ball of lightning. It moved only within a second before it caused an explosion, making the wall crumble. Smoke blew past the blonde until sunlight hit his face. Naruto gave a bored look on his face and the 14-year-old walked through the destroyed wall, passing the charred bodies of his victims that suffered from his act of merciless destruction. As he walked he turned back once more, seeing the Dark Guild collapsing from smoke and fire. He smiled faintly at his success. After all, this was his 5th time ending a Dark Guild's reign, even if it was a smaller one like the rest. In time, he'll handle larger ones. However, he had bigger things in mind. Naruto walked off into the woods, leaving as if he wasn't even there. Song end. Fairy tale. Over the last 14 years, Kushina had high hopes of seeing her son. Though there was no evidence of her son of ever being alive. Minato was one of the 10 wizard saints, and thus he was able to get info if the council had received any details on mages. Though neither of them knew if he was a mage or not. Neither could they tell if he was a normal boy as well. They couldn't just come to every home in Earthland and search for a child with blonde hair, blue eyes and whiskers on his face. Deep down, she gave into the thought of never seeing her son again, being with him in this peaceful place with her husband. Though she knew Minato wasn't the type to give up on things like this, for he was a leader of his people once. His goal to find their son was as strong as his will to become Hokage. Kushina and Minato never had any other children, and the thought of having a second child was too hard for Kushina to bear after losing their first son. Though she always was a mother figure to some of the children who came to Fairy Tail, from Marahan to her wild nature as a child that slowly nurtured to a mature woman of her mid-teens, as well as Natsu and Gray, both rambunctious boys who learned to respect each other, at least she was around. That made her wonder what her little Naruto would have been like. However, she was also closest to one who had similar traits as her in so many ways. She heard running footsteps come from the guild entrance as she turned to find a young woman around 15 years of age, wearing a set of armor under a uniform. Her scarlet red hair came down to her shoulders and her chocolate brown eyes carried tears of joy in them. She was none other than Urza Scarlet. If Kushina had a daughter she would have wanted it to be this young woman. As Urza came to a halt near Kushina, she put her hands on her knees as she tried to gain air in her lungs. Kushina chuckled at this. "What's the rush, Urza-chan, did you see a ghost?" Kushina joked as she sipped on some tea. "No, nothing like that, Kushina-sama," Urza said, calming down. She pulled out a slip of paper and gave it to Kushina. "I got promoted to S class." Kushina looked at the paper, she was amazed at the young woman, becoming not just the youngest member of Fairy Tail to become S class, but the youngest in her generation. Kushina was proud of Urza to now be recognized as one of the newly ranked members of Fairy Tail, becoming the 6th S class mage. "I'm so proud of you, Urza-chan, you worked so hard for this," she said, embracing the other redhead in a warm hug. Embracing Kushina back with her own, Urza smiled warmly. "I wouldn't have done it without that training you gave me." It was hard but it was worth it, she said smiling. Kushina gave a slight fox-like grin, rubbing Urza's hair softly. Oh, how she loved this girl. She was strong on her own accord, who knows how strong she'll become over the years. She was going to have a reputation to give out for the sake of fairy tale, though Kushina knew Urza would do just fine. After all, this girl was as resilient and possessed much of her fiery temper. Kushina spoke, a voice from behind. Kushina took a look at the side of Minato in his red trench coat with white flames, instead of his regular white with red flames. Minato-kun, you and Makarov came back from the council meeting earlier than expected. She said smiling as she walked up the mail. So how was it? She asked. Minato rubbed his head and shrugged. It was basically just a meeting with the guild masters about the sudden destruction of dark guilds. That statement was able to reel in both Kushina's and Urza's attentions. Sudden destruction. How many have been suddenly destroyed without it going around like wildfire in Sorcerer magazine, don't you think, Minato-san? Urza asked, who simply got away from Minato in return. Ah, like they care. Most of the stuff you'd find on them would be about the sexiest mages around, highly well-known or new mages. I don't think they would pay attention unless it came out noticeable or if it was a larger guild that was attacked. These guilds were just small, however, that doesn't mean that some were dangerously close to being well-to-do dark guilds like Eisenwalder Ration says. He pulled out a file and handed it to Kushina, which opened it. Two of those dark guilds were the dark guilds Cold Heart and Dark Titan. You would be surprised about the current info we have so far. Urza took a glance over Kushina's shoulder. She noticed Kushina's facial expression of surprise before looking at the files over the two guilds. Needless to say, she too was surprised. A chill went down her spines after seeing the results of the front paper. Build name: Cold Heart. Occupation type: Dark Guild. Build master: Tor Shiva. S-class mages: 3. Mages contained: 40. Location: Earthland, destroyed. Assailant: unknown. Estimated time of destruction: 2 hours and 50 minutes. Survivors: none. Build name: Dark Titan. Occupation type: Dark Guild. Build master: Brutus Shield. S-class mages: 1. Mages contained: 26. Location: east of the mountains, destroyed. Assailant: unknown. Estimated time of destruction: 1 hour and 27 minutes. Survivors: 1, comatose. Assailant rank: S-class. Approach with caution. Price: 25 million jewels. That's a pretty high bounty for someone who just destroyed 6 dark guilds, Kushina said as she looked at Minato. That's the problem with that paper. It says how many he killed, but if you look in the back page it will tell you that it didn't take him a month to kill those dark guilds. Minato furrowed his brows. It only took him this whole week to do it. A weak Kushina dropped the papers as she and Urza stared with wide eyes. How could it take whoever this person is a week to decimate all these minor guild within a week's time while they are around each region of Earthland? It's not possible unless they had an advanced form of speed magic, teleportation, or by chance, had much more advanced skills that led him to be fast by their own natural standards. To be able to move that fast makes it almost as fast as the Yondaime Reikage, and he muttered to Kushina, he wouldn't have known where the guilds were exactly, which was why it took only a week, 1 guild a day. It is like whoever this person is trying to make a sign. An ominous one at that, Minato thought. Kushina sighed, maybe Kakashi could gather any information on whoever this person is. I know he's on that 2-year mission, though what if you could send him a message to be on the lookout? She asked. Minato rubbed his chin, looking down at the floor before making his decision. I would tell him to, but he would have to be cautious about the people around him. The Mage Council even told us wizard saints to be cautious. We don't know any of this person's magic or skill sets, not even what he looks like. He just disappears after he's done. Kushina nodded, understanding he husband. I know Minato, but Kakashi can take care of himself, our power is different. She smiled, placing her hand on Minato's cheek and kissed his lips lightly. Have faith in him, he'll come through. She turned to look at the young scarlet redhead and smiled, grabbing her hand. Come Urza-chan, I want to see the full extent of your work at becoming S-class material. Kushina said with a slight glint in her eye, causing Urza to panic a little. Why yes, Lady Kushina, she said. Urza looked back at Minato and bowed her head. It's nice to see you, Minato, best wishes in your mission, she said, walking off with Kushina. Though one thought rushed into her mind as she came to dwell upon it. Who was this person that was attacking dark guilds? Naruto was walking in the far eastern woods near the mountains of Earthland. Simply minding his course, he sneezed lightly and sniffed his nose. Odd for me getting a cold. Truth was that it was odd. From being a child to a young, healthy teenager, with some aggression and violence issues, he had never once in his life had even an allergic reaction. He was as healthy as a horse, but that would be an understatement. Someone must be thinking about you. A deep menacing entered his mind, the voice gave off power and the very aspect of fear itself. A very familiar feeling that Acnologia gave off whenever he spoke. The blonde Naruto stopped walking, his brows furrowing with slight annoyance from his facial expression. So you decide to talk now after a year, you overgrown kitsune. At that moment his mental state was pulled within his being, dragged into what would be his mindscape, a sewer of all places, with pipes and all, water up to his knees. Naruto was staring at a cage, similar to a jail cell, with cold hard steel to restrain even the most dangerous characters. Within the cage, at least what was visible within the cage's dark depths, were two glowing crimson cat-like eyes, portraying so much bloodlust. The body of the figure was surrounded by slow waves of crimson energy. The figure was a giant fox with long pointed ears, bristled whiskers, a crimson fur surrounding the majority of its body. The areas where its eyes were located along with the outlining of its lips were covered with black fur. The difference between a normal fox and this one was that this fox was the size of Acnologia and that it possessed 9 tails. Kyuubi no Yauko was its name. For the last time, Ninjin, quit referring me as Kitsune. I am the great Kyuubi no Yauko. I should be called by my title. He demanded as he looked at Naruto, who rubbed his eyes and yawned. Yeah, whatever. So what do you want now? You haven't said anything in a year and now you feel like talking to me. What is you want? Naruto questioned to the massive fox. The fox grinned light. Well, this boy was annoying at times. He liked the fact that he didn't show no act of fear, not even a slight chill at staring in the Bijuu's eyes. The boy was indeed well trained. I am pleased that you are killing these beings called mages. It has been some time since we last spoke, but I've been watching. I am very pleased in your killings, boy, no mercy whatsoever. If you weren't human yourself, I would like you, but still, even if you were trained by that so-called dragon, that doesn't mean I don't loathe your existence. He said. That don't mean I don't like you either, but I'm stuck with your sorry ass until I get my hands on him. He firmly closed his hand into a foot as he irradiated a cold bloodlust around him. Oh yes, he was going to have some satisfaction in his life, it was just going to be a matter of time before he was ready. He just needed to train more, and killing off worthless dark guilds were the simplest training dummies until he faced the bigger ones. Ah yes, how I loathe him the most, almost as much as I loathe Madara Uchiha, though that's another story. Kyuubi shifted his body as he sat upright and looked down at the young blonde. Now why I have brought you down here is a different story itself. He said. So that is? Naruto asked. You've become the only worthy vessel that I don't fully loathe, but I still hate you. However, I would never agree to this if I hadn't made a second thought of it. The giant fox said. I have decided that I will allow you to use some of my chakra. As a small amount of his chakra was running through the gate, it was pushed back by Naruto's will. Sorry, but I don't need any of your chakra. If anything, it will only be a crutch for me if I rely on it too much. He said as he put his hands in his pockets and walked away from the gate, receiving a growl from the large Bijuu. You fool, don't you see that you're using your chakra with your magic attacks? You're using your chakra as a main source of energy, and as a result your attacks are more destructive, stronger than those who don't have chakra. You simply use magic as a secondary source of energy to refill your chakra faster. With my chakra you would have so much power in your hands, you could be stronger than that black dragon, you could even destroy entire guilds with a single strike. If you just used my chakra. We could. We? Naruto looked back at Kyuubi and snorted. Kyuubi, for all I know your chakra is the most addicting thing on this world, just by having one tail I wanted your power. However, I don't need your power. If I use it too much it wouldn't be me in my body, would it? It would just be you in my body while I'm stuck on a forever ongoing high of hatred and aggression. Naruto said with cold eyes. I don't need to be tainted when I have my own ambitions of causing destruction. The Kyuubi growled as he was about to lash out before he and Naruto looked up as they sensed something. The mighty Bijuu raised his ears lightly as Naruto's senses from the outside world picked up. From what both could tell, someone fairly strong was coming in close like a beacon, and it wasn't a friend. Naruto wasn't pleased with this at all. Someone's coming, Ninjin, Kyuubi said. No shit, Sherlock. Why don't you keep that to yourself while I find out? He said, receiving a roar of rage from Kyuubi as he left his mindscape and re-entered the real world. Naruto's ears picked up the rustling in the trees as he smelled the air and picked up a scent. His head raised up a bit as he smirked lightly. He headed out slowly, allowing his follower to track him until they were both in an open area. That of course, Naruto would have the advantage, or he at least believe. It wasn't every day he would pick a fight with one of his kin members and see what they were worth. He couldn't tell which one this one was, he had a strong scent, but it was one that Acnologia hadn't given him before. He slowly remembered what Acnologia told him about the two who he didn't have a scent on. Flashback. Dusan called out a young Naruto as he looked at Acnologia. How many dragons are there overall? He asked curiously. The black dragon shifted his head lightly as he looked at the blonde, and a low growl ruptured into his throat. Of course the boy would ask a question after smelling out the scents of the other dragons, aside from the high-class ones. Overall there are 12 dragons, one born every generation after one dies. The new generation of dragon replaces its former as the same element, basically it's like reincarnation for us, except we don't retain our memories of our past lives. The only ones unaffected by this is the light and dark dragons, Acnologia said to Naruto. You know Igneel is the dragon of fire, boy. Name me the other element dragons whose scent you have smelled from the scales I gave you. 4-year-old Naruto put his index finger on his chin as he thought long and hard. Dragon of the sky is Grandini, dragon of metal is Metallicana, dragon of earth is Baragon, dragon of poison is Komodo, and the dragon of water is Tsunami. He said, though what about the others though? Why don't I have their scent? Tatsumaki always changes the scent of his smell, he can use the wind to shift it, which makes him dangerous as one of the elemental dragons, because you can never track his true scent down, unless you were his dragon slayer. However, with the dragon of lightning I would advise you with caution. Out of all the 8, he is by far one of the strongest, and he has knack to back it up, even lasted an hour with me while I was at 50%. He told Naruto, he is more prideful than that brat Igneel, calling himself King Ghidorah, what an annoyance. Ignorant bastard. He grumbled. Naruto looked at Acnologia wide-eyed, he never heard of the elemental dragons having that type of strength to put the great dragon at half power. What about the others? Acnologia paused for a moment, then shifted his head to look back at the sky. He was silent for quite some time and huffed. You don't have to worry about the other 3 Naruto, they do not partake in any of the dragon ceremonies of making dragon slayers. I too did not do such a thing until I chose you as my dragon slayer, there was one other human who had potential, but he was not deserving of my magic. Naruto looked down lightly and kicked some rocks, will I ever meet others like me? Perhaps one day Naruto, I would advise not to let them know that you are my son, they don't know my scent, but they will know what you are when you use that magic boy. Don't befriend those who are weak, though I insist make an ally with some, though I advise you to be careful with probably Ghidorah's child. If they will be anything like that dragon then I advise you not to take them lightly. And once out into an open field surrounded by the trees of the forest, Naruto stopped. He raised his head and opened his eyes slowly. With a quick rush of speed his hand launched out to the right firing a shot of black lightning towards a set of trees. A blur of golden yellow lightning shot to the side as it dragged onto the ground. The explosion of trees being hit by the impact caused smoke to rise to the air. Naruto kept his hand out for the moment until he finally dropped it to his side and stared at the corner of his eye, the figure that formed lightning around him. The figure had worn a golden jacket made of scales with black edging on the short sleeves. Underneath it he wore a black shirt and matching black shorts, fingerless gloves and shoes. He was about 5'8", lean with muscle, but not with of large mass, and 2 years older than Naruto. His skin was dark green eyes and edged out hair and sharp canines similar to Naruto. Naruto noticed the angry look upon his face and slightly smirked with amusement. Seems I got your panties in a bunch, what is a single mage coming here all by himself to face me? He asked, slightly grinning. You destroyed the guild that was supposed to mine to destroy. The male snarled out as his fists balled up. I'm not going to go back to my guild empty-handed until I get the satisfaction of beating the shit out of you. Naruto chuckled as he shot out a ball of black lightning once more only for it to be eaten by the male. The blonde smirked at this and his eyes focused on the taller male. I figured he was Ghidorah's kid, this will be amusing, he thought as he patted his shoulder. Now playing Fairy Tail lost released power. Very well, if you believe you have what it takes then I will be your opponent. Naruto unclipped the strap of his sheath and placed his sword on the ground, he wouldn't need it for this fight. It is customary of known those who I fight, whether they are worth staying alive or dying just like the rest. The redhead pumped his fist toward his chest as he showed his guild mark on his forearm. Kaiten Dragon, S-class mage for hire, Kaiten told Naruto, his index finger pointing at Naruto now. You are Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto said, popping his neck as he looked at Kaiten with a calculating look. I would advise you to be careful when fighting me, Kaiten, otherwise you'll be dead the first moment I lay a hit on you. Kaiten laughed as he shook his head in disbelief, keeping his eyes closed a brief second before opening them once more. He grew pale as he saw it, the black lightning encased fist coming at his face, only a fire inches away. Kaiten charged lightning around him quickly, dashing to the side before he was at a good distance from Naruto. A bead of sweat rolled down his head as he gritted his teeth. I didn't even hear him move, he thought as he got into position, his eyes focused on Naruto. He was cautious now, arrogance wasn't needed for this, if there was going to be a single ounce, then he would be dead for sure. Impressive movement, even if it was just a miscalculation, I wouldn't have ever thought you would be able to adapt to using your lighting as a speed enhancement. Similar to that of Laxus of Fairy Tail. Naruto said, charging the lightning around his fist as the wind picked up. However, I won't rely on my true speed for this. I want to see who's better, lightning or storm. Better yet, my Raiju no Arashi versus your Kaminari no Mitsuru Meho. That got Kaiten wide-eyed for a brief moment. How do you know? Knowing that you're the son of the strongest elemental dragon of this generation, I had my thoughts. I couldn't tell who you were by your scent, but it was a gut feeling. When I allowed you to eat my black lightning, I knew you were Ghidorah's son. Naruto told Kaiten. After all, your father put up a good fight with my own father, even if he wasn't at full power. Don't talk about King Ghidorah that way, he can crush anyone. Kaiten yelled. Besides, you stated yourself he is the strongest dragon of his generation, that makes him better than yours. Childish, you have his arrogance like Tucson said. Naruto felt the wind pick up around his body as he charged a black sphere. I said he was the strongest of the elemental dragons, not stronger than the high-ranked dragons. He smiled. Though I'll tell you, if you impress me I'll give you a taste of what your father had gotten. Then I will kick your ass. Kaiten yelled, rushing at Naruto, punching his fellow male with lightning-encased fists. However, those were avoided as Naruto dove down and launched an uppercut to the lightning dragon slayer's chin, sending him airborne and flying back a few feet before he landed on his knee. Kaiten narrowed his eyes as he launched himself at greater speed, aiming a knee towards Naruto's face. The blonde skidded backwards before he came to a halt and lowered his face to stare at Kaiten, unfazed by the blow. Both smiled wildly at each other as lightning charged around their fists. Seiryuu no Hotenjeki. Kaiten yelled as he threw a lightning spear in the form of a javelin at Naruto. The blonde didn't move until his hand touched the lightning spear. Manipulating it with his hand, he grabbed the base of it, aiming the point at Kaiten and launching it back. The red-haired dragon slayer moved his head to the side as the javelin cut a few strands of hair, causing an explosion once it hit a set of trees. What did you do? He said in a commanding tone. I never tell people this, though I suppose I'll tell you. Raiju no Arashi, or better known as Raiju Arc, is a lost magic. A lost elven magic to be exact. Unlike your lightning dragon magic that feasts of lightning or lightning magic, my Raiju Arc can manipulate all forms of lightning. Naruto chuckled. In other words, we could be at a stalemate or one of us could get the better of the other. We'll just have to see now, don't we? Kaiten said as he inhaled air. Seiryuu no yellow light grew as lightning surrounded. Narukami no Naruto inhaled the air in his lungs as a white light emanated from his mouth. Hauko. Hauko. A roar of yellow and white lights blasted across the field, colliding in mere seconds as the explosion had spread debris between both dragon slayers. Through the sounds of lightning crackling, the sounds of flesh and bone smashing against each other came from within the smoke. The smoke cleared as the fast movements of both key players of this fight avoided each other's attacks as they came to fight with the surge of lightning in their possession. Naruto kicked Kaiten with quick force added with black lightning. The kick smashed into Kaiten's abdomen. Kaiten winced at the hard kick but retaliated as he grabbed a smaller male's leg and threw him to the ground several times with great strength before raising Naruto one final time, slamming him into the ground as hard as he could, causing a crater. Eric no Hoken. Kaiten yelled as he shot out a massive fist formed by lightning in a downward thrust. The crater Naruto was in had grown to a greater substantial size as the crater had spread outward. The crater had shown Naruto, eyes closed with blood running down his lips. Kaiten thought he had gotten the upper hand in this fight as he chuckled. Then he stopped as he felt Naruto's energy signal and quickly looked down to find a magic symbol below him. Raiju Arc. Shajakiha Naruto muttered as a sphere of black lightning shot up and hit Kaiten square in the chest, sending him up into the sky as Kaiten was encased by the black lightning. Kaiten growled as the lightning electrified him to great intensity, but he grinned as he swallowed the lightning as a whole, landing on the ground on his 2 feet. You're good, I've never had this much fun fighting someone before. Hell, eating your lightning hurts the hell out of me a little, Kaiten said, wiping his mouth of saliva. Naruto jumped out of the crater and patted his tattered jacket. He bore no expression on his face as he looked at Kaiten. You're not so bad yourself. The only human to actually land some decent damage on me was the guild master of Cold Heart. He may not have been the level of well-known, powerful guild S-class mages or guild masters, but he was a decent fight. Naruto told Kaiten. Though I know that neither of us are going all out, so how about we this at the full extent and see who's better with lightning? Kaiten chuckled, couldn't agree more. His eyes glowed a golden color as his lightning went from yellow to a strong gold. Lightning erupted him, taking form of a dragon-like structure with 3 heads and a set of arms, giving off a roar. He grinned wildly as he was at his fullest. This is my full potential, even though I never learned Dragon Force, my power is enough to make it as a wizard saint in the near future. Oh really? Naruto produced black lightning around his body as he prepared for a battle between the strongest lightning uses. Then let's see what you got then. Naruto held out his hands. Raiju Arc. Genzai no Kaminari. Kaiten held out both hands as a magic seal appeared in front of him. Seiryuu no Nagashi. Gold and black streams of lightning backlashed the entire open area as they collided, aiming to push each other back. Naruto manipulated the redhead's lightning as Kaiten slowly feasted upon the black lightning that Naruto made. Both attacks ceased as Kaiten finished eating the black lightning, and Naruto dispersed Kaiten's attack in different places. Song end. Inazuma Raida. Naruto moved at great speeds from the lightning surrounding him and smashed his knee into Kaiten's nose, causing the redhead to stumble back a few yards. Though, he jumped to his feet and with his own burst of lightning, sped forth and wrapped Naruto in a bear hug and growled. Ryu no Denryu. Kaiten yelled as he shot a burst of lightning that engulfed him and Naruto. He could hear the blonde grunting in pain as his body was tensing up from the impact. Kaiten smiled defiantly at this. "Can't manipulate my lightning now that I got you in my grasp now, can you?" he asked, smashing his forehead into Naruto's nose. "Now you regret fighting me. K's, Jiki Kikshk." Naruto tensed even more as lightning coursed through him, he gritted his teeth for a moment. He felt his magic power slowly slipping. The blonde's eyes widened slightly as he looked at Kaiten. "My magic energy," he said. "Ah, so you finally noticed, eh? I thought it would be a while, but you are very perceptive. K's, Denki Kikshk drains the magic that's in your body, manipulating it into electricity as my body feeds on it. I'm feeding upon your lightning energy, and soon I'll hit the main course until you have no reserves whatsoever," Kaiten told Naruto. Naruto paused for a moment as he looked up and closed his eyes, the lightning still surging around his body. He gave a menacing smile, his lightning magic stopped as it was replaced with something much darker. "Then I suppose you are worthy of fighting my strongest magic." Then Naruto looked at Kaiten as a short burst of black energy blasted the red-headed dragon slayer back. "Now play Fairy Tail Lost Mystigan theme." The ground began to tremor lightly as Naruto's magic power had risen to a different level. Dark energy had encased his fist, the scrapes and bruises on his face had faded as he grinned, baring his sharp canines. Naruto's ice blue eyes stared at Kaiten, closing them and opening them once more to reveal the Miryu no Jagan. Pale eyes stared at Kaiten's magic power as it began fluctuating. Naruto smiled. "It seems you're a little nervous, you should be downright shitting yourself." Naruto, in a mere instant of speed beyond what he used in his previous fight, appeared like a ghost in front of Kaiten, punching him in the stomach as the lightning dragon slayer was sent back into the woods. Naruto gave a low growl as he let out a thunderous roar, causing the trees to bend back and snap, some being sent back as they were pulled from their roots. Naruto had his eyes set directly at Kaiten, a magic seal appear and broke as he sent his attack. Miryu no Mega Ken. A massive shadow-like first came towards Kaiten as it collided with the ground. Kaiten had no time to react to the second attack as Naruto grabbed him by the ankle and threw him across the field. Miryu no Dangan. Naruto shot out several small-sized spheres at Kaiten. The lightning dragon slayer landed on his feet, skidding across the field as he slapped the black spheres away from him until he noticed Naruto just a few feet away from him, the blonde's head encased with a blunt layer of shadow. Miryu no Ramujai Akutai, his head rammed into Kaiten's sternum, receiving a cough of pain as blood shot out from the redhead's mouth. The duo headed into the woods. Kaiten smashing through several trees until the attack ended and he skidded across the ground. His breathing labored lightly as the impact gave him shortness of breath. Naruto landed on top of him, crashing into his sternum once more. Kaiten yelled in pain, looking at Naruto's cold, merciless pale eyes. He raised his hand which was encased in shadow, manipulating into a twin-tipped-like spear appearance. "Miryu no Yamanari," Naruto said as he thrust the spear-like hand downward. Kaiten's eyes widened as his jaw tightened. Was this the end? Had he gone so far as to be beaten by someone who had a strength like he had never seen before? He closed his eyes waiting for the final blow to come to him. Moving fast, the piercing blow wished to bring about his death. The sound of it coming down came to him, but a loud thud hit beside him, shaking the ground a little. He opened his eyes as he looked to see Naruto's eyes reverted to normal. Looking at the left, he had seen what would have been the final blow just a mere inches from his head. Song end. Wa was the only thing that Kaiten could process in his mind as Naruto got off him and stood up. His hand reverting to normal as he turned to walk off. "Where do you think you're going?" muttered Kaiten. Naruto stopped as he looked back at the older dragon slayer. "It's simple, I'm leaving. I wanted to see if you were worthy of actually fighting me when I used the best of my abilities with Raiju Arc. Showing you my strongest magic was just your reward." Naruto turned his head forward once more as he walked off. "You were trained well, I look forward to seeing your progress, Kaiten Dragon." The Tudo walked back into the open field and grabbed his sword, re-strapping it to his back. He patted the dust off his tattered clothing, luckily he had spares of his outfit, otherwise it would be rather annoying to get it fixed by humans who tailor clothing. The most annoying thing other than riding the damn train for Naruto was going into the larger towns. He heard the sound of footsteps and looked back to see Kaiten holding his ribs lightly. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he looked at the redhead. What do you want, son of Ghidorah? Hopefully not finishing business, otherwise sparring your life would have been pointless. He said. It's King Ghidorah, he said. And no, I figured I've had enough of a beating one day. I know by now that even at full power, I could never beat that strength your ass pulled in the last minute. So what do you want? Asked Naruto. Your training, Kaiten spoke out. You took me out easily with your dragon slaying magic, I couldn't even get a chance to attack. Even if I did I wouldn't know how to counter it unlike your lightning magic. Why should I help you? You could have simply not attacked me, though your anger and arrogance is what led you to do so, and it is what led to your defeat. The blonde said. Because you need work on your lightning magic, compared to me, your skills are lacking perception, as well as not using them to make perfect synergy with your senses. Basically what I'm saying is you're not using your combat skills like you were with your dragon slaying magic. You were just using them like they were from someone else's fighting style. Peyton said, which somewhat hit a nerve in Naruto. I can help you with your secondary magic and you help me strengthen my skills as a dragon slayer. Naruto didn't look back as he was lost in thought for a moment, he closed his eyes and huffed. While he didn't like humans, he did respect strong mages, especially his fellow dragon slayers to extent. As long as they were strong, of course. Acnologia did say to make an ally of one of the elemental dragon's children. What other reason was there? Live with happiness. Naruto's eyes widened slightly by a voice as he lowered his eyes. He scoffed as he looked back at Kaiten and frowned. Fine, but you're going to work for your part during our travel, and you better not slow me down. Naruto stated. Kaiten chuckled as he gave a thumbs up, got it boss, he told Naruto, falling face down on the ground unconscious. Naruto's eye twitched as he growled, I said don't slow me down. He yelled. And? Hey you. Sorry I took so long with this guys, I wanted this to be around 4.5 to 5.5k, but I never expected this to be 7.5k though, I am pleased I did good on this piece. I was thinking about using a different arc, but then I realized where I wanted this part to go. Of course though this chapter has led me to know what the next few chapters I want to do, and I'm sure you will like them. First off I want to introduce you guys to Kaiten as one of my few arcs that will be in this fan fiction piece. Aside from Gajeel, whom I think is one of the strongest first-generation dragon slayers, Kaiten will be a force to be reckoned with. He has similar traits like Laxus with lightning magic, but they will be so much different once his character gets built up more within the story. Kaiten is strong, if anything, he was prepared to fight Naruto with Dragon Slayer versus Dragon Slayer magic, he would have had put up a decent fight, but Naruto never gave him the chance, nor did he expect it. However, he would have lost either way, simply because Naruto feeds off magic, some magic he can't, but he will feed off all types of magic. He won't need to as much simply because he mixes chakra with his magic reserves. Secondly, Kyuubi is introduced, pleased with Naruto, but wants more out of him and is trying to tempt our favorite blonde. Though he gets his ass chewed out instead, don't worry you'll see more of Kyuubi later. Third, for the dragons' names. For those who know, I used two Godzilla character names, Baragon and King Ghidorah, most of the others aside from the canon names I made up. Why did I chose those names? Baragon is awesome, he is basically earth and can breathe some form of fire. Though in the story he will be known in here as the dragon with the strongest defense in his generation. King Ghidorah because he's just a badass, has the ability of magnetism and lightning, I altered him a bit to have arms. Fourth, the whole one elemental dragon per generation was kind of my idea as well, I just don't believe that most dragons live for super long periods of time or are immortal. So I thinking like Avatar somewhat. When one Avatar dies another replaces the last. This goes for the elemental dragons. The non-elemental, Acnologia, Dragon King, are going to be immortal or have really long lives. Lastly I want to thank everyone for the reviews and I hope to receive a lot more from everyone. I want to thank Lanky Nathan for the support and Kitsune Dragon as my beta for this. I hope to get a lot more reviews and comments from everyone who reads this piece of work. Chapter 5. Shadows over Eisenwald, Song of a Lullaby Part 1. The young Naruto was walking within the woods as he headed toward what would seem to have been a mid-sized wooden house. It was made of strong oak wood and possessed a fresh garden of vegetables and vines of grapes and watermelon. Naruto could see a person working on the vegetable garden, a woman with silver hair that matched her silk white dress, white long hat, and pale white skin. She was in her early 20s and no more than 5'7". She was a beautiful pale goddess within the sunlight. Naruto smiled, running towards the woman with happiness, seeing as though this was what brought him to the brink of happiness in his life from all the hellish training that he had gotten from Acnologia. The feeling of such great euphoria welled up in him as he rushed faster toward her. Hey! He yelled, attempting to gain the woman's attention as any child would attempt to gain the attention of any adult who was close to them. The woman turned her body, what Naruto would have thought to be a perfectly clean dress in the front. However, that was what it not came out to be. Blood had dripped on the earth as the woman's dress was coated with blood from the chest down, blood had also came down her forehead. The sight gave Naruto a fearing chill down his spine, coming to a halt after a few meters away from the woman. The bleeding beauty slowly walked toward him with small weak steps, her hand reaching out to him. Once she was close enough, her hand touched Naruto's right cheek, stroking his whiskers gently. She gave off warmth even in such a dreadful state. She smiled faintly as she spoke something to Naruto, though unable for him to not hear the words coming out of her lips. It was only seconds before the sound of something flying in the air hit Naruto's ears. The sound of metal piercing flesh met his ears with a sickening squelch. A sharp pike-like spear had punctured the woman's chest, hitting her directly through her lung. Slowly she fell, falling to her side with a light thud and the sound of metal hitting the earth. Naruto's eyes were widened, blood was on his face and silence as both within and outside his mind. Who would have done such a thing, to kill someone so precious and beautiful? Someone who had such radiance of life flowing around her like she was part of the earth herself. Cutting the thread of her life would mean the ultimate pain brought upon this world, bringing only the deepest of sorrows and the deepest feelings of anguish. Rain came down ever so lightly as it grew heavier and heavier. Naruto's body shook, his hand on his mouth, the rain having camouflaged the tears running down his face as his body trembled at the woman's lifeless body. An intense emotional pain came within him as it slowly built up. He couldn't describe it, but it had hurt so much. He couldn't think straight, there was just one thing, one voice in his mind that echoed one thing. Kill them. His mind blurred out for a brief second, from emotional pain that slowly turned to rage. He couldn't bear it anymore as he looked forward at the attackers, shadows of multiple figures. Naruto felt his blood boil, and his eyes burn with such intensity as if fire was within him. The sensation had even caused the pouring rain that hit his skin to evaporate at the touch. It appeared as if steam was being expelled from his body. He snarled as he saw only shadow around him. The only thing left that he had done was give out a scream. A raging animalistic scream. That day something died, humanity had all but died, it had become dormant as the beast was unleashed. Instantly Naruto's eyes opened up as he jumped up from the bed. He was heavily panting from the dream, no, more like a reoccurring nightmare that has haunted him ever since that day so long ago. His eyelids were slightly black from lack of sleep. For the last few weeks he was exhorting his body from training and traveling. Rubbing his droopy eyelids, he groaned lightly as he shook his head and sighed. He felt like he had only gotten 30 minutes of sleep, but from the sun hitting the curtains he could tell well enough he had gotten at least 6 or 7 hours minimum of sleep. Yet he had not understood the signs of fatigue hitting his body, possibly because of the dreams, yet more so than anything else. He gripped the sheets tightly as he gritted his teeth, feeling his energy coming back to him, the fatigue slowly dissipating after quickly regaining his senses. He reminisced upon the dream, the woman in white, the features, the blood, the death. All indeed too similar to what had happened all those years ago. Deep down he knew he could never let it go, and he could never forgive himself, nor those who cause it. Adelina, he thought as he gripped his bare shoulder. Naruto was in a room, be it a hotel. It was laced with red curtains covering the window, red velvet wallpaper, an identical red rug, and 2 twin-sized beds that were covered with the similar red quilts with white sheets. He disliked staying hotels just as much as being in towns, reasons because it was crowded, secondly it was crowded with humans. Though he did need supplies every now and then, so he had to go to town, however, being in a hotel was very much not his idea. Loud snoring met his ears. Naruto's eyebrow twitched at the annoying sound which echoed throughout room as he slowly turned his head and stared at the opposite bed across the room. A foot hung outside the edge of the bed as well as an arm. A bundle of short red hair was outside of the sheets. The snoring became more profound as it grew to become an annoyance for the son of Acnologia. Naruto twitched his eye a little more as he got out of his bed and walked toward the other bed, ripping the sheets off to show Kaiten drooling in his sleep. Seemed he was having such a peaceful dream, such a shame it was going to be ruined. Naruto raised his hand and drove it into a downward slash, hitting Kaiten directly in the face. The redhead yelped loudly, holding his nose as he fell out of the bed. He was on his back kicking his feet in the air as he cursed out profusely. After a brief moment of the pain fading away, he rubbed his nose which was slightly red. He glared at Naruto with yellow cat-like eyes. Damn it Naruto, that's not a way to wake someone the hell up. Why in Zeref's name would you do that? He yelled looking up at the blonde. Because I can and your snoring was annoying the shit out of me. Naruto walked to the curtains and opened them only for Kaiten to get hit by the blinding rays of the sun. The redhead hissed as he covered his eyes, the sun, my weakness. He yelled. Naruto rolled his eyes and sighed, whatever, hurry and get your ass up, we need to leave this town. Naruto quickly put his black tank top and his black cloak jacket. He grabbed his sword and strapped it upon his back and placed his remaining items in storage rooms. Peyton grunted as he got up, putting on his black shirt with a pair of matching black shorts and shoes on, and his golden jacket with black outlining. He rubbed his hair wildly as he got it naturally spiked up once more and showed his sharp white canines with a wide grin. Naruto gave a slight smirk as he opened the door, both of them heading out of the hotel room. Naruto and Kaiten had been partners for as much as a year, growing stronger, putting their strength to the test on not just themselves, but with mages who have dared cross them. However, those who have crossed them have yet to escape with their lives. Kaiten aided Naruto in learning his own way of fighting with his secondary magic, just as Naruto helped perfect Kaiten's dragon-slaying magic. While Naruto hadn't had the understanding of his style, he knew the basics of it, just making it his own perfection would be the harder part. Through thick and thin, the rivals had done nothing but kill off dark guilds and take their money. Though not as much as of late, the last few months the Magic Council had caught wind of them. How? Neither dragon slayers could tell, but they knew that the council thought of them as a threat or as perfect weapons. Over the entire year they were known as the Shadow Duo, for no one knowing what they looked like due to the fact that those who had saw them never lasted more than a few, both had a name for themselves alone. Kaiten was known as Kaiser, while Naruto was referred to simply as Hai. In the outskirts of Ashibana town, the duo walked into the woods, the area of which consisted of dead trees, muddy trail and an entire gloomy scene of dark bustling clouds in the sky. While this didn't bring Naruto no mind, Kaiten was simply curious about the place they were traveling to. Sure, they had been on the lay low for the last almost 3 months, but what was going on in Naruto's head now of all times? Kaiten stopped for a moment and looked at the shorter blonde who was now 5'7". "Say Naruto, we've been going on this trail for a while now, don't you think it would be nice to tell me where we're going?" asked Kaiten. Naruto stopped for a brief moment as he looked back at Kaiten at the corner of his eyes. He turned his head back as he pointed out towards east of the trail, before putting his hands into his pockets. "Tell me Kaiten, what do you know of lullaby?" he asked. Lullaby? Kaiten puzzled for a moment before something had crossed his mind. Ghidorah once told him about a demon whom resided in a flute, one of the dark items of the dark mage Zeref. Isn't that supposed to be the demonic flute which is said to kill those whoever hears the sound of whoever is playing it? It's some sort of curse magic that it possesses. He gave a quizzical eyebrow. "Why do you ask?" "I heard rumors of a dark guild who has recently obtained a unique flute, a flute that fits the description of which lullaby is supposed to look like in flute form." Naruto narrowed his eyes as he looked ahead of the trail. "What we're going to do is not our usual routine, we are going to destroy the guild." "So we're going to basically take lullaby?" the redhead asked. "No, not take, more of the lines of destroy the flute before anyone even decides to use it, it would be an annoyance to have that thing around in the future. I don't need one of Zeref's little toys to come around and cause nothing but trouble." Naruto looked up to the sky and smirked. "Besides, it's one of my jobs to destroy the items that Zeref left while his time here has departed." "Alright, I understand destroying the guild, but why not use lullaby for our own benefit? Wouldn't that make things easier for you to defeat Zeref if he ever come around?" Kaiten asked, though only received an aggressive scoff from Naruto. "You told me once that Acnologia wanted you to fight Zeref, you don't think it's a good idea to use lullaby?" "Fool, I don't think the strongest mage of possibly of all time would be defeated by one of his own items. He would probably use it against me in some way, besides destroying his items would possibly delay Zeref's forthcoming into this world. Acnologia may have wanted me to kill Zeref, but I know my strength and it's not at Zeref's or Acnologia's level, even at Dragon Force, I possibly wouldn't stand a chance for Zeref, and certainly not for Tusan." Naruto continued to walk forward. "Time is all I have to keep growing stronger, strong enough to stand my ground against the dark mage himself. Only with the power of dragon slaying magic." Kaiten sighed slightly, he knew Naruto quite well over the last year, but for him to acknowledge someone stronger than him was rare. Though he knew quite well that he too had to admit he wouldn't stand a good fight against a powerful mage such as Zeref, perhaps if he trained over the years to the brink of death, maybe like he had done while training to perfect his dragon slaying like Naruto. Though nothing is perfect as they say, he just needed to surpass the skills he had now with his main magic. He followed behind Naruto as he thought deeply for a moment. "If time is what I need as well, then I will get the time to develop all the skill I can obtain," he thought before he spoke. "So which guild possesses the lullaby flute?" Naruto remained stoic as he kept his pace, he only said one word that would ultimately change the fate of the guild and those aware of existence. For it would be the guild that would not be known for being disbanded. It will be known as the guild that will become extinct. Eisenwald. In the deadwood forest outside the town of Ashibana lay a small tower-like building, having a large wall covering all 4 corners of the tower structure. The clouds were dark and gloomy around the area, and the sound of celebration was held within the place as glasses of beers hit each other and the singing of joy hit the room. This place was better known as Eisenwald, the dark guild that disbanded from Guild League 4 years ago due to taking on assassination missions. It was their specialty and more so their calling to the Dark Guild and to the few powerful mages that were within the walls. They were recently part of the Dark Guild Alliance, the Balam Alliance, though they had taken some ways of taking down guilds in their own hands. The perfect way now of all things was the lullaby flute, which they had found. They could take action at the next guildmaster meeting, and it would be an exciting moment to take down the most powerful of guilds ahead of schedule. An extremely tall, lean-built and yet mildly muscular man sat on a pedestal staring at the celebrating members in front of him. He had silver hair, which was held pointing upwards in spiky strands on top of his head, but hung down to the left of his face in a distinctive tuft, partially covering it and reaching down to his shoulders. His eyes were dark, lacking eyebrows, had an elongated face with sharp features and somewhat pointed ears. His eyes were circled by dark lines, and each of them has a simple tattoo right below it, consisting of a pointed line going down vertically, crossed with two more, larger horizontal lines. The upper part of his body was similarly tattooed, but with much larger, intricate and blue-colored motifs, which took on spiraling forms and adorned his shoulders, biceps, pectorals and back. He was the strongest member of Eisenwald, better known as the Shinigami, or simply better known as Erigor the Reaper. Erigor smirked as he held a glass of wine in his hand as he leaned back into the pedestal and swirled the liquid around in the glass before taking a sip of it. He was very pleased that the guild had gotten one of the great artifacts of Zeref. He and all the dark guilds would finally be able to bring the downfall of all the guilds, destroying the council, and bring this world, once more, into the Dark Ages. It was a marvelous idea that had run through his mind ever since they had become a dark guild, the ideal of revenge and having an age of chaos and no laws. It would be such bliss to his ears. He didn't care how many of his guild mates had fallen, as long as the people knew of the injustice that the Magic Council has done to his guild and sees this as their punishment, he would be satisfied with the chaos. He chuckled for a brief moment, though that brief moment would only be for a brief second. He heard something outside the walls of Eisenwald. At first he thought he was only imagining things, but then it happened to pick up in his ears again once more. It was a familiar sound that he was all too well with, the sound of small brief screaming and the sound of bone cracking bone under the celebration. He stood up and narrowed his eyes as he stared at the large front doors. Nothing happened, not another single sound had occurred under the voices of his guild mates. However, that all changed with a sudden explosion blasted the entire front of the guild, sending guild members flying across the room, some hitting the floor hard, others smacking into the wall. Smoke had blew past Erigor, who covered his eyes, until the gust of smoke died down and stayed still until it slowly released into the, getting a view of who would dare come into the guild unannounced. "Did you really have to do your big entrance as always?" asked Naruto once his view came out of the smoke. He narrowed his cat-like ice blue eyes at his taller partner who only gave him a chuckle. "That's the whole concept of my big entrance, it's supposed to strike them surprise." Kaiten gave a slight grin as he looked at the place filled with a large number of scattered members. "It works like a charm, it scares them to death. It only scares them because of the fact that they don't know that you're going to blow practically half of their guild apart, giving them a big damn clue that we are here, you moron. I told you to stick to my last plan of sneaking into this damn place," Naruto told Kaiten. "Then where is the fun in that? You know as well as I do that you can't handle going into any guild without a good fight or to kill someone, I've seen how bored you get." He got an annoyed look from Naruto and slapped the male on the back. "Thanks for agreeing with me, buddy, old friend, old pal." Erigor looked at the two with narrowed eyes as he grabbed his scythe that was by the side of the pedestal. Most of the members got up and glared at the two as they stared cautious and infuriated at the two men. How dare these fools come and take part of Eisenwald down? Who are these insects to think that they are worthy to step into their territory? Who do you insects think you are coming uninvited? Asked Erigor as he pointed his scythe at the blonde and redhead. He grinned, but he felt a cold chill run down his spine, something that he hadn't felt before in a long time. He stared at the blonde who gave a cold glare. This glare though seemed to be something out of this world though, it vibrated through the room, sending a deathly like chill like the end was coming for them. To some maybe it was the sign of the pale horse coming to claim their souls. However it was different for him, staring in those eyes which sharpened more dangerously at him. It was as if he was staring at the eyes of a god who was putting judgment upon him with fury. The redhead's glare was no less different, giving off the sign that judgment was coming for them and that the drums of thunder would cause great impact upon them. "Who are you to call me an insect, you human?" asked Naruto. He walked a couple steps before members of the guild surrounded in front of him. He chuckled, "I don't think a wall of your guild members won't stop me from claiming you head or that flute." "How do you know about the flute?" Erigor said, grinding his teeth in anger at the blonde. "Oh, who knows, a little rumors here and there, but that doesn't matter, we just came here to destroy it and we'll kill anyone who gets in the way of our matters," Naruto said with a sly smirk on his face, getting Erigor more angry. Naruto took a couple more steps as he walked toward one of the guildmates who smiled, raising his cleaver. He was quickly frozen stiff, his body becoming lifeless as his arms dropped. Naruto smiled as he stared at his arm, his hand and pierced through the male's lung. He could feel the quick puncture to the lung as a quick death for the guild member, seeing as blood would come into the organ. Naruto yanked his arm out hearing the body drop, flicking his arm with blood twice as the red liquid flung around some of the members' faces. The wind picked up around our favorite blonde as lightning conducted around him as well. Launching himself past the members and ramming into Erigor, he sent Ergier and himself crashing through the wall of the building and through the outer wall into the open area. They went out to the back, "Let's get 'em boys," one of the members said before a lightning hand pierced through his torso, allowing him to fall to the ground. The members turned to see Kaiten covered with lightning as his eyes glowed a golden hue slightly in the shadows covering his eyes. "None of you are going anywhere and none of you are going to live because your fight is with me." The lightning shined brighter as it sped outward, hitting many of the guild members with a great shock. Kaiten pulled out a foot-long trench knife, a golden tint to the steel and a black handle. All the lightning that surged around him gathering into the short blade forming it into a long blade filled with lightning magic. By the time most of the energy was absorbed, the blade of the trench knife was soon to be around 4.5 feet in length. It gave off a slight static sound and radiated brightly. Some were awed by this transformation, others were mostly cautious. Either way, Kaiten was going to have so much fun with them. He counted the number of members, around a good 45 of them. "So tell me, which of you are the main members of this guild?" There was no answer from any of them. Kaiten looked around and huffed lightly as popped his neck. "Don't want to say it out loud, eh? Well, seems your deaths will be very fast like the others then." Kaiten told them as he came at the group in a burst of speed. He zigzagged towards the center, cutting countless members. By the time he was at the center, he heard multiple screams from those he had blazed through. He looked out from the corner of his eye and noticed a pool of blood that came down from 15 of them, all of them falling from the deep wounds that held on their sides, back, and neck. Well, I'm not compared to Naruto with his quick kills, I'd say I'm good on my own part. He looked at the members which scattered around and prepared to assemble around him. Compared to his annoyingly speedy reflexes, I'm a complete opposite, though still giving myself practice to do the same shit wouldn't hurt, he said as he rubbed his nose and looked at them. Suddenly, out of the blue a fist build-up of shadow hit him in the face, sending him skidding him back somewhat. Kaiten stopped as he moved his head to look at the direction the fist came from. He looked to see a pale-figured man of an average thin build size with his black hair in a ponytail, making his head look like a pineapple. He could see a bead of sweat drop from the man's head. He moved his lower jaw around in irritation, taking a deep breath, and smiled at the pineapple-headed man and pointed at him. "Seiryuu, with the pineapple-shaped head. Mind telling me what your name is?" He asked happily as the scratch from his cheek vanished like it hadn't even existed after the blow had hit him. Needless to say the least, the thin man, also known as Kageyama, wasn't too sure whether he did the right thing or not. Something about this guy seemed off, almost as much as the other guy, and to him that wasn't much of a good thing either on his book. Slowly his body sunk deep into the floor. His ability to use Kage Meiho was handy in times to avoid up-close and personal fights such as this. He knew that wasn't his game, his style was to go for places that his opponent wouldn't hit him from, sneak attacks, and guerrilla tactics were the best choices for facing a foe of this caliber. He should know how to take someone like him down, he was one of Erigor's best assassins and strongest henchmen. "I am Kageyama of Eisenwald, I'm one of the best men here aside from Erigor, so I suggest you turn around and run with your tail between your legs." He went into the shadows and prepared to move before he noticed Kaiten raise an open hand to his face and gave a wicked smile. That put distress on Kageyama. What is he doing? Kaiten only chuckled as a magic circle appeared in front of him, prepared to meet the sunlight. "Fools," he closed his eyes, "Tenken." He yelled as a great surge of light blasted around the area, blinding all the remaining guild members. He inhaled air as he prepared for an attack, Ryu no. Kageyama instantly went to fight for flight in his shadow state, unlike his allies who were blinded by the temporary perpetual light that had given them lack of sight. Were standing there covering or holding their eyes for protecting what sight they could hold from the scene. He rushed past his teammates and quickly tired to escape behind Kaiten. He wasn't sure what the attack was, but the build of magic energy was intense that it was sending a small tremor to the ground. "Those fools, if they don't move they'll be sitting ducks," he screamed in his mind before moving out of Kaiten's range before the attack could claim him. Once he got behind Kaiten he moved his head up and quickly yelled, "Move your asses, boys." But it was all too late as the energy rushed into Kaiten's move and came out in a terrific blast. "Howko?" Kaiten sent a blast of lighting the size of the entire room as it collided with the members of Eisenwald in front of him. The impact caused many of the members to go into great shock of what happened to them before the light in their eyes left them. For some, it took death longer to come as the scream of pain hit their lungs like others as the blast sent them back. It was only the small handful of them that had survived but were in critical shape once the blast had ended, leaving them on the ground like many of their lifeless comrade. Tattered, injured and worn out. What was left of the powerful Dark Guild was no more than rubble, leaving the small number of survivors, Kageyama and Kaiten in the destroyed area. Now playing ignored by Ion. Kageyama felt beads of sweat run down his forehead as he looked at the scene, everyone he knew, the place he had called home for years. It was all gone like it was a storm that blew through the place, killing everyone with one strike of lightning. He saw all the main members on the ground, most dead, but the few that lived were already near death at such an alarming rate. How could one man, just one man out of the two that came here beat all of them so easily? He would have been S-class to do such a thing, but to kill them was a different story, defeating even the main members without Erigor proved simple, and all it took for him was one attack to wipe out half of them. This was a massacre of all things he had seen. He saw the core members of Eisenwald, the main group that made the Dark Guild strong on the ground in such a death-like state. Chicken, Karaka, Rail, Twins Briar Goblin Fortune Teller. His ears twitched as the shift of rubble hit his ears as he looked up to see a pair of deathly golden cat-like eyes staring at him. "That's shit," was Kageyama's initial thought as he dove into the shadows as a punch came down toward him. Kageyama moved a great distance before Kaiten's fist hit the ground causing a crater. He dove out of the shadows as he raised his hand toward Kaiten and reacted with fear clutching his chest. Kagerachi. A wave of shadow snakes came at Kaiten, multiple heads aiming at him and only him. Though the red-headed smiled as he raised his lightning-encased trench knife and slashed vertically at the snakes, splitting their heads from their body, dissipating them into the shadows from which they had came from. He watched the shadows faded and slowly turned his glance at Kageyama, who was staring at him with such fear. A brief smile was all Kaiten had outside to show the brunette that he knew he was afraid. The look that Kaiten had on his was what Kageyama would know all too well. The look of which someone would die in the slowest way possible, torture. Kaiten walked slowly toward the pineapple-headed man as lightning surged around his body. He took one large dash and in seconds, was near Kageyama. Kageyama sent out multiple shadow fists at Kaiten, who only moved out of the shadow's way and continued to come at Kageyama. There weren't many options to fight this beast. Kageyama surrounded himself in his shadow guard. The dome barrier was surrounding him, protecting him like a turtle's shell would against any threat to his life. Yet in that moment he put up that dome, lightning pierced his shoulder and continued through and through his flesh before forming stabbing into the floor. The dome shattered as Kaiten held the weapon, pushing it deeper into Kageyama's shoulder. "So, you think your little shadow magic has what it takes to handle me?" Lightning quickly shocked Kageyama, eliciting a scream of pain as Kaiten's answer. "I thought so." As he amplified more lightning within the lightning-powered knife, receiving more screams of agony from the member of Eisenwald. After long minutes of non-stop electrifying torture, it all stopped for Kageyama. His voice was hoarse, his body was tattered with second and third degree burns from the lightning coursing through his entire body. His sense of feeling was nearly gone as he couldn't even feel the ground he laid upon. He could tell that by the entire time that his body was being electrocuted that his organs were failing him, life was slowly slipping from him as fast as the strain on his body grew. He could tell that Kaiten was done, but for how long he wasn't sure. This guy was a monster, and he was just staring at him like Kageyama was nothing more than a bug to squash. What are you?" Kageyama asked, his voice coming out with a deep strain on it, getting a smirk from Kaiten when he spoke. "What am I?" Kaiten paused. "That is a tough question for the people me and my partner come across. You could say that me and my friend are a duo of sorts. Though alone I am what many of your dark guilds call Kaiser. Personally, after joining my comrade I prefer to toy with my little foes. He on the other hand, tests their skill of worth. If he is unimpressed, then a quick kill is often the case." Kaiten said. Kageyama froze at the name. Where had he heard of it before? He was sure he heard of it from the meetings with the rest of that Balam Alliance. He remembered that he heard of two men wiping out about 10% of the Balam Alliance forces in a short period of time. Even before the alliance formed, many dark guilds were destroyed. Having Lullaby would have given them back what they had lost. He gave a dry laugh, looking at Kaiten with one eye as he rasped his words out. "It doesn't matter if you are Kaiser, you should have let your friend take care of us, he'll just be killed by Erigor," he said. Kaiten looked at him for a brief moment and quietly asked, "What rank of mage is Erigor?" "He is about a high A-class mage," Kageyama said. "A-class, huh?" Kaiten chuckled at the words, "Your friend is going to get slaughtered like a lamb." The words sent chills down Kageyama's spine. He swallowed a little bit of saliva as he asked, "How so?" "Oh, you would like to know, I suppose." He pushed his weapon down more and smiled. "Well, you see, even at my full strength Naruto could beat me. He's more dangerous than he looks." Kageyama's eyes widened. The other one was stronger than this monster. Just what the hell were those two? "Before I joined him he took part of the smaller dark guilds in the area, before your guys formed the Balam Alliance, and those smaller guilds formed into the minority of what you guys have now. While he despises humans, he despises one other being that poses a threat. He hates Zeref and anything about the man, including his artifacts, which is why we're here to destroy Lullaby. He doesn't like the fact that you dark guilds are going to use such artifacts, which is why putting you down might give an omen to the other dark guilds. However, if that doesn't work, then we'll just kill off another guild and another until there is none of you left. He put one hand in his pocket as he slightly turned his electrified blade slowly in Kageyama's shoulder, receiving a small groan of pain. Though aside from that, my partner is a well-known mage, a dangerous one that he naturally goes by his title. You all may know him simply as Hai. He said. Flying Shadow said awed but fearful Kageyama. Yes, Kaiten gripped his blade handle firmly, though with that knowledge, I am afraid I can't let you live. Kaiten charged his lightning once more. He chuckled as lightning electrified his enemy with great power, letting Kageyama scream for his life, which slowly died down as his body slowly stopped moving. The darkness was coming for the member of Eisenwald, he hitched his breath with fear as his lungs collapsed. The only thing left on his mind was the dangers that awaited for the other Dark Guild if they knew of the two coming after them. Okami Aration says would lose its entire army by the hands of these two men. No, these two weren't men, they were devil incarnations, the lightning within shadows. Kageyama only had one thing in his mind before dying. Is this the end for us? Song end. Erigor skidded onto the ground and came to a stop as soon as the scythe dug into the ground, slowing him down. He had cuts all over his body and slight burn marks on his torso area. His forehead was bleeding lightly as he raised his head to look up at his opponent, who seemed to be anything but harmed. It was an irritating thing for Erigor, not once had he came across someone who could manipulate his wind magic attacks and counter them with his own and use lightning as well. It was distasteful in the least as he looked at the young blonde. Erigor slowly got up and held his scythe, the wind slowly picked up around him as he floated in the air, looking down at Naruto with narrowed eyes of aggression. I don't know what type of magic you have boy, but that will not become a hindrance to our plans for Lullaby. Erigor pointed his blade and grinned, I have waited for this day in ages, to see the world fall into darkness with the power of Zeref at my hands. He said. Naruto stared emptily at Erigor and scoffed as he put his hands in his pocket. Slowly, he too floated up into the air as he was carried by the wind, becoming parallel to Erigor and frowned. Please, a human like you wouldn't have the worth to even control Lullaby. He looked at Erigor's side, seeing the tip of the flute tucked close. There is a reason I do not want an annoying musical instrument of death wasting my time when I have better things. So how about just handing it over or else you'll just get more than a taste of what I can do. Naruto told Erigor as the wind slowly spiraled around him as his hair rose up. Erigor gritted his teeth, clenching his jaw tightly, was this some kind of joke? How dare he mock his power saying that his was superior? Kazemaho is the perfect magic for assassination. The wind gathered around Erigor as it enveloped him into a type of body layer. His eyes were white within the wind as he growled at Naruto, the sound of his voice echoing through the wind. You bastard, who do you think you are calling yourself stronger than me? I will wipe you out of existence. I present to you my trump card, Kuromo. I will destroy you with my ultimate trump card. Erigor told Naruto. Naruto watched the sight and sighed with displeasure. Humans were so arrogant, they couldn't just go and leave with their tail between their legs like the cowards they were. He closed his eyes for a brief moment. Fine, if death is what you want, then I shall give it to you. His eyes opened once more to show the glowing pale sea blue eyes. Allow me to show you true despair. End of part 1. What if Naruto is neglected by family Acnologia, and thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.